Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Escondido City Council. Please rise for a moment of reflection and remain standing for the flag salute.
Yes, please join me in a moment of reflection. We come together tonight to say thank you. Thank you for the privilege, the blessing, the honor it is to serve here in the city of Escondido. We come together tonight as a diverse community, a community from backgrounds, different beliefs, different presents, and different futures, yet one common goal, that is the betterment of this city. We come together tonight to seek guidance, wisdom, and discernment during deliberations that transpire this evening, and in doing so, we lift up Councilmember Fitzgerald, Councilmember Christian Garcia, Councilmember Martinez, Deputy Mayor Joe Garcia, and Mayor White. May they be granted peace and wisdom as they lead our city into a bright and prosperous future. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This meeting is now called to order. Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Present.
Councilman Garcia.
Here.
Are you Deputy
Here.
Mayor? Okay. Councilmember Martinez.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Garcia.
Yeah, here, still here.
Yeah, okay. And I, Mayor White, am here. We do not have a report out of closed session tonight, so we'll move on to public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a few speakers on off-agenda items. First is Cesar B. Javier. Cesar B. Javier. And as you're coming forward, just for everyone's edification, if you wish to speak this evening, you can do so by filling out one of these yellow forms. Just bring it to myself. You can also scan the QR code over there as well if you'd like to do it digitally. And as a reminder, we do have a decorum policy in place. And real quick before you begin speaking, I know the two of you are there. Are you going to? Oh, I'm so sorry. So sorry. Sorry. Just are you both going to be speaking, or are you both going to be speaking, or is it just one of you that will be speaking?
My name is
Perfect. I
Purita.
just wanted to make sure. Thank you. So you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
I am Purita Javier.
Good evening first.
I did. Good evening. I am Purita Javier, senior with existing medical condition and victim of ceramic kiln toxicity emissions since 1997. APCD since 2022, having jurisdiction on air quality since remained enacted. They were saying it's negligible region-wide and that to set up monitoring despite Director Paula Forbes advised to call APCD when kiln operates. We are submitting to you a copy of the APCD Code Rule 11 exempting 20 industrial and manufacturing businesses, which include ceramics kiln fueled by wood, gas, or electric. This ruling attracted the owner to locate, construct, add, operate, and even alter facility in a residential zone neighborhood. The owner, with its business guide, non-metallic, non-metallic, mineral product manufacturing, known as ceramics pottery manufacturing with kiln. Owner got his business tax tax permit and fire permit for $38 per year. Following the rule, owner is obligated to pay for.
Thank you, Ms. Parita. Your time has
look.
expired. Thank you so much. Were you going to deliver comments to Mr. Parita?
I am
Okay.
submitted, sir.
Okay, yeah, you have 3 minutes then for yourself.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Good evening once again. I am the husband and I am protecting my wife, myself, our community. We are concerned not only for ourselves, safety and health impact, but we have to look after also our neighbors. We are predominantly Asian and Latino neighborhood. And since we engaged with APCD, now I recall Ma'am Martinez was one of the governing board member. I do not want to speak the negative like Clint Eastwood movie. We only speak of good things, not the bad and ugly of what was happening during your participation in this particular district, which was pulled out by the power of Mayor Gloria, and he looks like the owner of APCD. I think that's the ugly thing there. With the vision of trying to, reconstruct and make it a sharpened thing to address clean air for all. It's the opposite. And that expectation failed us. Mom Fitzgerald, with the new infusion of thinkers, I hope we could be saved because this is the root cause of our misery. Rule 11, exempting 20 industrial, including this manufacturing ceramics. These are emitting poison gas, air contaminants, the particles we do not see, toxic gases that we cannot smell, a business that emits smoke and odor. That makes my Purita pressured to reach a level of Alzheimer, dementia, and lately declared as going up based on the diagnosis on the emergency hospitalization last week. And thank God it was not a pneumonia. Mom Fitzgerald, Mom Martinez, we asked you to please pray for us, number one. Number two, let's do something on the rulings. I do not believe that governing board members should only look after just governing or making rules, but rather to ensure that they are investigated, amended
Thank you, Mr.
in
Javier. Your time has
accordance with the
expired.
time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ma'am Fitzgerald. We have reached other members, Santi, Coronado, and
Thank you, Mr.
City of
Javier.
San Diego. No more. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Good evening.
Yeah. Our next speaker is Greg Oliver.
Mayor White, Deputy Mayor Garcia, Council. Leadership in public service is defined as the ability to listen, assimilate, debate, and build consensus. For over a year, I've watched residents stand at this podium telling you what they need, and you aren't listening. Recently, you've ignored over 2,000 residents and 30 regional leaders who asked you to cancel the HSI ICE contract, choosing instead to hide behind an administrative loophole. When you voted to keep that contract because you were, in your words, afraid of putting a target on our back, you admitted that the agency is a danger, yet you yielded to it. Right now, Capitol Hill is in a bipartisan agreement that ICE is failing in its mission to remove the worst of the worst. You've tethered Escondido to a failing agency out of fear. That doesn't feel like leadership, it feels like poor judgment. You talk about public safety first, but our displacement policies have created a balloon effect that pushed unhoused people into residential courtyards. You claim to support housing while presiding over a 13,000-person waiting list and a dismal 28% shelter exit rate, well below the 50% industry standard. You're presiding over a revolving door of failure and calling it progress. You refused a welcoming city declaration. You opposed Prop 50 despite not understanding how it affected our own districts. When the public, the experts, and the federal investigators are all pointing one way, you're driving another. We have to ask why. Either you're in an ideological echo chamber or you aren't up to the job. Since you aren't listening to the voters or the experts, you must be listening to somebody else. My question is, who has your ear? Because it clearly isn't the people who come here every week. If you could let us know who you do listen to, then maybe we could talk to them and they could relay our message. Maybe you'd listen then. I yield my time.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Our next speaker is Luis. Luis? Yeah, perfect. Yeah. And this is our final speaker on oral communications, and then we'll be moving on with the agenda.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I just want to say that I came here to express my grievances to the city government. Last year I came here, I was homeless. I always paid my taxes, I did everything good. Today I'm not homeless no more. So the thing I want to say is like, where's the help? The only one that offered help was the chief of the fire department. You're a pastor. How come you never offered for me help? You're supposedly believe in God and helping other people. And what I'm just trying to say is like, where's the help? If you guys are trying to make the city feel better, help out the community, because in the end of the day, we pay taxes. You guys work for the people. And like the other gentleman said, who are you listening to? Who are you getting orders from? In the end of the day, you guys are supposed to get the orders from the people. Help the people, help your community. So that's what I'm just trying to explain, like what's going on. Then you're allowing ICE to come in here, use the firing range. There's nothing bad with that. But the community doesn't want them, then why are you doing it, you know? And like I said, you know, in the end of the day, we pay your taxes. You're supposed to be there for the people, not against them. And not only that, try to help out more homeless people, because it seems like only certain people get help. And the only people that seem to get help is the ones that you guys know they're never going to live that homeless life. I always paid my taxes. I did everything good. Never got help from nobody. I asked everywhere in the city for help, and nobody helped me. And thank God, I got a job. I'm doing better. But you should do a better job at helping the homeless people. There's a lot of good people out there. When I was homeless, I met a lot of good people that they're not on drugs, they're not doing nothing bad. They just felt some hard times. And they told me the same thing that happened to me. They don't want to help me. They don't want to help me. Why? Because they're not stuck on the cycle. They only help people that are stuck on the cycle and that they know they can make money off of them. That's the sad reality. Some of these nonprofits, the owners of the nonprofits, they're making six-figure salaries. And why are they making six-figure salaries if they're nonprofits? Well, there's homeless people out there starving, getting away in the rain. Like, what's going on? I just want to know the truth. I grew up in Escondido. I grew up here. I know what I'm talking about. I know what I lived through. And I know there's some BS going around.
Thank you, Luis. Your time has expired.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
No further public comments.
All right, that brings us to the consent calendar. Items 1 through 10 tonight are on consent, and I'll go ahead and move to approve the calendar as is. Okay, motion and second, please vote.
Voting is open. Motion approved, 5-0.
All right, that brings us to item 11, our first public hearing, and this is the Juniper Street office to residential conversion. The public hearing is open, and the time is yours.
Thank you, Mayor and Deputy Mayor, and good evening, council members. Ivan Flores, Principal Planner with Planning Services, and I'll be presenting on item 11, which is a request by Darshan Patel to convert an existing office building to 32 residential dwelling units. Here's a quick overview on the items we'll discuss this evening. We'll start with the request from the applicant and finish up with the recommendation from city staff. On May 15th, 2024, Darshan Patel submitted a plan development permit to allow for ground floor residential uses on the site, and a design review permit and density bonus request to facilitate the conversion of an existing 30,000 square foot office building into 32 residential units. I'll provide more details on the density bonus request and what that includes in the following slides. The project is located at 332 South Juniper Street and is developed with an existing office building. Grand Avenue is approximately 0.16 miles north of the project site and provides convenient access to the downtown area. This area of Juniper Street is predominantly developed with low-intensity office and commercial uses, along with single-family residences that have converted into office uses. Additionally, the project is located on the suitable sites inventory as identified in the city's adopted housing element, and I'll discuss the importance of that in the following slides. The property is located within the downtown specific land area, specific planning area, and is within the Southern Gateway Land Use District. The vision for this area, as detailed in the downtown specific plan, is to serve as a gateway to Grand Avenue and to provide for residential densities that can support the existing businesses and professional offices located in the vicinity of the project site. As you can see from this image, the project sits at the edge of the downtown specific plan. On February 10th, the Planning Commission held a duly noticed public hearing and voted to recommend approval of the project. The Commission primarily discussed the requested incentives and concessions associated with the density bonus requests and lighting at the driveway along East 4th Avenue. There was no public comment provided at the Planning Commission hearing. Now we'll move on to the project analysis and how the project complies with the requirements of the downtown specific plan. The allowable number of units on the site under the land use regulations of the downtown specific plan is 30 dwelling units. Pursuant to state density bonus law and Article 67 of the Escondido zoning code, the applicant proposes to deed restrict 8 of those 30 dwelling units for low-income households. In doing this, the applicant is allowed an increase in the number of units and is proposing only 2 bonus units for a total of 32 units. Additionally, as I stated earlier in the presentation, the city had identified this property as a land suitable for residential development, and that could assist the city in reaching its regional housing needs allocation, also known as RHNA. This site was identified for a total of 22 units consisting of 14 low-income units and 8 above moderate units. The project, if approved, would result in a net gain of 10 units. However, the city would lose the remaining 6 low-income units identified in the housing element. Despite this, staff has determined that there are adequate remaining sites with capacity to meet the city's share of low-income units. In addition to the increase in density, the applicant is eligible for incentives and concessions and waivers pursuant to state density bonus law. Just as a reminder, incentives and concessions are limited and tied to the percentage of affordable units and must be related to a financial cost associated with constructing the project. While waivers are unlimited and relate to any requirements that physically preclude the project as proposed. In this case, Mr. Patel has opted to use their incentive or concession on the items shown on the slides. The requested incentives and concessions were reviewed by the Staff Development Committee, which consists of the Utilities and Fire Department and Building and Engineering and Planning Services. And it was determined that the granting of these items would not impact the public health and safety. And for that reason, staff's recommendation includes granting of the density bonus requests, since it is consistent with state law. As discussed in the staff report, the project includes minor improvements to the existing site. On this site, we see the current layout of the parking and the existing trash receptacles to the north. The site currently has access on East 4th Avenue and will continue to have access once the project is completed. The extent of the improvements as shown here are the reorienting of the stalls adjacent to the alley and a new trash can enclosure to screen the trash receptacles. In addition to the density bonus items I discussed in the previous slide, the applicant requested a reduction in the amount of off-street parking spaces and will provide a total of 45 when only 40 spaces are required. Pursuant to state density bonus law, this parking reduction is not considered a waiver and is simply an additional benefit. Here we see elevations of the building, primarily from the west side along Juniper Street, and the east side, which is if you were viewing it from the alleyway. The exterior also includes very minor modifications, namely for the placement of windows, and the exterior material and color will be retained. Two public comments were submitted prior to the Planning Commission hearing. One of those comments was in opposition and generally questioned the adequacy of off-street parking, while the other comment was in support of the project. This is the same comment that was provided earlier today from the California Housing Defense Fund. The project was determined to be exempt from further environmental review pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act under a Class 32 exemption. This exemption applies to projects that meet the following criteria. The property is less than 5 acres and has no value for endangered rare threatened species. It is consistent with the applicable land use regulations. The project would not result in any significant effects related to traffic, noise, air quality, or water quality. And the property can be served by all required utilities and public services. Furthermore, the project does not trigger any of the exceptions to the use of an exemption as detailed in attachment 4 of the City Council staff report. Based on the information presented by staff during this public hearing and the Planning Commission recommendation, City staff recommend that the City Council adopt ordinance number 2026-05 and resolution number 2026-40 approving the project. That'll conclude staff's presentation, and we're available for any questions.
Thank you. Before we get to questions, Darshan, did you want your 10 minutes?
I can take a couple minutes and field any questions should you have any. Good evening, City Council. I appreciate your time. As you know, we are on a mission to take vacant office buildings that are open to theft, fraud, vagrants, and other disastrous types of actions that are being taken by having an open building of that sort and turning them into apartments. I think the more supply that we have in housing allows us to have lower rents. So like the people before me that came talking about trying to find affordable housing are actually able to do so. As you know, there's a project right around the corner from this particular one that we came before you all last year. We broke ground and started construction there earlier this year. That project is going well. We're expecting to have those open by the end of this year when we're looking to do something very similar in this case. I know that Mr. Flores had mentioned in regards to a public comment that was opposed in regards to parking, off-street parking in particular, which is interesting. I guess I want to make one clarification, is that the requirement we have for this particular property is to provide 40 parking spaces. Our plan calls for 45 parking spaces, so we're actually providing more parking than what is actually required, and so I just wanted to make that clear to the person who fielded the public comment. But here to answer any questions, should you have any. Otherwise, I think Ivan did a great job accurately describing this project.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll come back to your questions too. Do we have any public comments?
None.
Okay. Then I saw my colleague reach for a button. Did you want to speak?
Thank you, Ivan, for the presentation. I really think this is a perfect housing in just the right location, and I do like the idea of transforming a lot of the older office buildings into the housing. And in reading the staff report, where it says suitable sites inventory of the city's adopted housing element as a site that is suitable for the development to fulfill the RENA needs allocations, I'm looking at how we are intentionally, purposefully looking at areas where we can provide these types of housing for low income and meet those needs. I also think it's very commendable that Mr. Darshan, that the company, forgive me for not remembering the company name, that they went above and beyond just providing the required low-income housing. You know, there is a need for them to have 14 of those be low-income is actually very commendable. So I don't have any questions. I just did have the comments on that. I think that is perfect, and I'm glad that we're looking at vacant buildings to revitalize them and provide the housing that we desperately need. And I did notice that it is 45 parking spaces instead of 40. And I do agree, the greater the supply, the lower the rent we're able to offer the people in the community that are struggling financially. So thank you for the presentation. Thank you.
I forgot to close the public hearing. We'll close it, and I'll just say real quick, I'm supportive of the project. I love the fact we're taking some of these older office buildings and turning them into housing, in particular in that area as well. So I'm supportive. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve both resolutions.
I'll second.
Perfect. And I'll turn it over to the rest of my colleagues.
Like you said, this is similar to the one that we were looking at previously. As I went through that, I was like, oh yeah, this sounds very familiar, and a lot of the details and things that we discussed previously, I see that they've all been taken care of. So just low-income housing, great, it helps us with our RENA numbers, so I appreciate that. And you know, and I've said a number of times I'm a stickler for parking, and when I saw that, I said, awesome, and you repeated it here. So thank you very much for that. I am also in support of the project.
Mr. Patel, there you are. Hi. Good to see you again. Just one question. The office building there, is it completely vacant, or is there any residential in the area now?
There's no residences in the...
So no one's living in it?
Will you come up to the
Yeah,
microphone,
probably
please?
best. Yeah, thank you.
Currently, there was one tenant that was remaining. She had 400 square feet there. She ran her small business out
Okay.
of that property. Her lease actually just expired on February 15th, so the building is actually currently completely vacant,
Okay, good.
save for the police officers who have asked to utilize the space to perform some drills and training, and we were happy to allow them the space
Okay.
for no charge.
Thank you. I do remember you coming last year, and I know that there was a situation with some of those being converted before the permitting. So I want to make sure we didn't do that again. So thank you for not doing that.
Sure.
And I will go ahead and support the project.
Thank you.
Mr. Patel, appreciate the inclusion of the affordable units. I think 10 extra units that will support families that are of low income is just great work. So, and you know, the other thing that I appreciate that you've worked with the staff. It's been very streamlined, so I appreciate just everyone's work, the staff, your guys' work, everybody involved. So thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, there's a motion and second. Please vote.
Voting is open. Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you both.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, on to number 12 is the public hearing to consider the adoption of safe sidewalk vending ordinance. And I'll open this public hearing and turn it over to staff.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council members. My name is Jennifer Shenik. I'm your Director of Economic Development. And this evening, with the City Attorney, Mike McGinnis, we will be presenting the first reading of the Safe Sidewalk Vending Ordinance. In today's presentation, we'll review the Retail Entrepreneur Growth Pathway, discuss the timeline for community engagement with this project, review the background and history of the State Sidewalk Vending Act, review the allowable local sidewalk vending programs, discuss the ordinance and other local programs, review the program benefits, and conclude with a recommendation. In 2019, the state of California implemented SB 946, the Safe Sidewalk Vending Act, which decriminalized sidewalk vending and established various requirements for local regulation of sidewalk vendors. Shortly after, several nearby cities close to Escondido adopted local ordinances, including Oceanside, Vista, Carlsbad, and Poway. After identifying resources to implement a program, the Economic Development Subcommittee has recommended the adoption of a local ordinance providing for local health and safety regulations. A sidewalk vending business is just one type of business in a continuum of retail business types that an entrepreneur can utilize to grow their customer base. Someone might start with an at-home business, including a cottage food business, and they might grow into a micro enterprise home kitchen operation, which is called a MICO. Entrepreneurs might attend farmers markets and special events to sell their goods. They might expand into a sidewalk vending operation. We also have mobile food trucks in our city. We love when an entrepreneur can grow into a permanent retail location, and we also have entrepreneurs in our community engaged in e-commerce activities. All of these business types do require a business license according to our local code, and if they're selling food, they're also required to obtain a county health permit. In reviewing the goals of the sidewalk vending ordinance for the city of Escondido, the first one identified by the Economic Development Subcommittee was to ensure public health and safety standards were met by vendors. The second goal was to ensure a fair process for all businesses operating within the city and allow the city to track how many of this specific business type exist within the city so we can offer support to them. And number three, create a pathway for retail vendors to grow into permanent locations. When it comes to community engagement, there were public meetings that started in 2023 through the Economic Development Subcommittee to gather community feedback on a draft ordinance. We held additional public meetings in 2026. So while we started the work in 2023, it was identified that there weren't resources at the time and there were other competing priorities, so the work was put on pause, but it was restarted at the request of the Economic Development Subcommittee in January 2026. And again, the public gave feedback on the draft ordinance. Now we are in March for the first public hearing of the program. If it is adopted, then staff will work to create the program permit, including fees, the guidelines for the program, and also public informational material that can be used to reach out to these sidewalk vendors one-on-one and help them come into compliance before the ordinance would go into effect for regulation, which would be early 2027. Here are some high-level summary points. Our attorney, Mike McGinnis, will go into the details of the ordinance, but I wanted to highlight a few. So from a vendor requirement perspective, they must comply with all state and local permit requirements. obtain a business license, obtain a city-issued vendor ID, which would prevent them from being asked for their ID on site when they're vending out in the public right of way, and they must comply with operating requirements. When it comes to the operating guidelines, vending is limited to sidewalks and pedestrian paths with limited distance requirements, which Mike McGinnis will go into in more detail in a moment. Roaming vendors in residential areas are limited to between 8 a.m. and sunset, and vendors are not allowed in areas with pre-approved agreements, such as special events. With that, I will turn it over to our city attorney for additional details on the act.
Good evening, Council. Mike McGinnis, your city attorney. I'm going to principally cover two items that will be talking about the act itself, and then we're going to talk about the proposed ordinance. I'll finish up with some of the benefits associated with the program and talk a little bit about the other cities, what they're doing. So it gives you a sense of where we place amongst our local agencies. So the legislature back in 2019 decided that they saw a patchwork of local ordinances and regulations which created obstacles to businesses, including these kinds of businesses. They were also concerned about the potential for criminal enforcement, which may be impeding the opportunity for people concerned about violating local ordinances and having criminal prosecutions arising from that. So the state legislature tried to accomplish effectively four things: trying to provide economic development opportunities to low-income and migrant communities, increase access to culturally desired and significant goods, contribute to a dynamic public space, and promote health, safety, and welfare for the general public. And that theme you'll hear a lot throughout the course of my discussion. So when we're talking about the act, what are we talking about? It's the sale of merchandise or food. It's going to be taking place on a public sidewalk or pedestrian path. We're not talking about sales on private property. We're talking about in the public right-of-way. And the code talks about two different types of street vending, roaming and stationary. The distinction between them is important for certain locations. But generally speaking, the roaming carts or street vending locations are going to be non-motorized conveyance, push carts. If somebody is holding a package of materials, that can be it. But it's temporary stops for transactions. The stationary vendors we're looking at tables in a fixed location where there's no movement. To give you samplers, one would be the roaming, which would be the typical push cart, and a stationary would be kind of this fixed table, sometimes accompanied by a pop-up or a umbrella. So I'll start first with the restrictions on local agencies, and I think this is important for setting the table for what the city can do in the space of sidewalk vending. The local agency may not require a sidewalk vendor to operate in specific parts of the public right-of-way. In other words, you can't force the vendors into one particular area except, and this is that touchstone, for objective health, safety, and welfare concerns. That is that general police power that we have for many things, but in this case, that it does allow the city to regulate for particular uses and activities when it can be potentially affecting health, safety, and welfare. You cannot generally prohibit a sidewalk vendor from selling food or merchandise in a park. There are certain exceptions to that, which I'll talk about. And you cannot restrict sidewalk vendors for operating only in a designated neighborhood or area, except, again, when there are objective health, safety, and welfare concerns. There are the ability to restrict in residential areas, and we'll talk about that in a minute. A further restriction is you cannot restrict the overall number. In other words, you can't cap the number of vendors permitted in your jurisdiction, again, unless there's a specific and identifiable objective health, safety, and welfare concern. That, I think, would be pretty difficult to meet. You may not require a sidewalk vendor to have first obtained consent or approval from an adjacent business owner or some other entity. So, and that's been a question that we saw as part of our Economic Development Subcommittee meeting. Why aren't local businesses allowed to kind of protect their space? You cannot do that. You can't have a veto power over adjacent vendors. Recently, in October of 2025, the state legislature passed the Street Vendor Business Protection Act, and that was designed in large part to ensure that the information that's gathered as part of the sidewalk vending permit process is not thereafter used for other purposes. And so you cannot collect, and we don't propose to collect, any kind of information that includes criminal history or background, immigration or citizenship status, or place of birth. We cannot require fingerprints, live scans, or background checks of vendors who are applying for a permit. As well, with respect to the records that we have, we are prohibited from voluntarily allowing access to those records, and the California Public Records Act has exempted from disclosure any of this information. So all of that vendor information that we intake as part of the permit application will be protected. So there are certain things that the agency can do as part of the sidewalk vending, under the Sidewalk Vending Act. You can require a permit and a valid business license for sidewalk vending. You can require a CDTFA, the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration seller's permit, in order to track sales. You can require the submission of certain information on the vendor's operations, including vendor names and types of merchandise. You can reasonably restrict hours of operation, sanitary conditions, making sure there's compliance with local health regulations, making sure that the vendors are compliant with federal ADA requirements and disability access, and any other generally applicable laws or things that we have room to regulate. You may prohibit stationary sidewalk vendors vending in a city park, but that is really going to take place when you have a signed exclusive concessions agreement permitting the sale of food. So it's protecting the concessionaires from sidewalk vendors. You can prohibit sidewalk vendors in areas located within the immediate vicinity or during the operating hours of the permitted certified farmers market or permitted swap meet. And you can prohibit stationary sidewalk vendors in exclusive residential areas, but not roaming vendors. Local agency may also prohibit vending in parks, and again, this is what I mentioned earlier. But there's two factors that we should be taking into account, and the state requires that we take into account. You need to make sure that what you're doing is ensuring public use and enjoyment, and that it's necessary to prevent an undue concentration of commercial activity that would unreasonably interfere with the scenic and character nature of the park. So again, I think that's kind of a hard space to be in unless you have great concentration in one particular area. You can prohibit sidewalk vendors within the immediate vicinity of an area designated for a temporary special permit, when we're talking about like parades and outdoor concerts, encroachment permits. The state law has very specific tiered fine structure, and it's split between those with permits and those who have not obtained a permit. But in either case, you cannot have any criminal penalties for sidewalk vending. In the case with sellers with permits, the fined tiers are $100 for the first, $200 for the second, and $500 for all additional violations within the first year of that first violation. Those without, it's basically doubled, $250, $500, and $1,000. You cannot have any additional fines, assessments, or penalties. The city of San Diego recently suffered a loss before the Court of Appeal where they were confiscating seller carts, and under the belief that they could do that because it was part of some recovery, and the Court of Appeal said you cannot do that. That would constitute an additional penalty, particularly if you're taking the seller's products along with the cart. So that is prohibited. You can rescind a permit upon a fourth or subsequent violation, so you have a little bit of control in that sense. The state law also requires, with respect to these fines that I just went through, the agency must have an ability to pay determination that gives the opportunity for the violator to approach and attend a hearing where it can describe its inability to pay that fine. The city's got to accept 20% in full satisfaction if the violator can demonstrate a certain level of income constraints that are noted here. And of course, an agency can always allow for community service in order to allow a violator to pay off a fine. So when we went through the Economic Development Subcommittee, both the first instance and in the recent one in January, there were primarily 3 different focuses that we were asked to include and be available for to ensure that our code is looking for these particular things. First, making sure health, welfare, and safety, making sure that the vendor, customer, and general public safety are regulated, and public access issues, including ADA and sidewalk obstructions. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the proposed ordinance. First, we do require permits for all sellers. They've got to provide identifying information, including a government-issued ID, but all that information will be protected under the Street Vendor Business Protection Act. They must require or include any other permits, including CDTFA or health permits, business license, and those kinds of documents. We are not requiring insurance requirements. That was something that was looked at, but we came to an opinion that, first, we don't really need it. We don't see a risk to the city in these operations. And 2, the cost associated with that would be prohibitive. The permits themselves are unsignable and non-transferable. They're for 1 year, and the seller must update with any information that would constitute a material change. The permits do not provide an exclusive location to vend. The permits themselves have some, the city has some regulatory control over that. You can revoke them after a 4th violation. You can not renew them when you have outstanding fines, and you have other opportunity for denials or non-renewals if under certain circumstances. The revocation and non-renewal notice must include the reasons and the right for appeal. And then once that right of appeal is provided within 10 days of service, then a hearing officer through the city manager's office will review and issue a decision within 90 days. The general vending rules are displayed here, making sure that people have a visibly displayed business license and vendor permit, have the photo identification with them, so there can be hopefully a quick contact with whoever we have code and compliance that's talking to somebody, so it's quickly done, and we're not asking for a vendor's driver's license or those kinds of things. We're really looking just for the city-issued photo identification. You cannot vend to motor vehicles. You cannot display food low to the ground. We're using 28 inches just to make sure there's no tripping hazards. We want to make sure that the area around the vending carts or tables are clean within the 10-foot range. The vendors must exercise best management practices for food and beverage handling, and all of their making sure they have capture materials for spills. And what we are recommending is that the city manager issue implementing orders and guidelines such that we can, as we work through over the next few months and see the practicalities of these kinds of issues, we can include those as part of our guidelines. And it'll be a little more flexible. But we can always bring back, should there be any issues, an amendment to the ordinance. The vending locations, you're only allowed to do this on sidewalks and pedestrian paths. Again, this does not include private property transactions. There is a series of prohibited locations in the code relating to locations that are dangerous, traffic medians, bike paths. There are a series of roadways, super prime, super major, and major roads. I can give you a sense of just a couple of those. For example, a super prime would be Valley Center Road north of Midway. A prime arterial would be Valley Parkway from Auto Parkway to Tulip. Super major would be Center City Parkway from 15 to Mission. Those gives you an example of some of those. And again, part of the guidelines and part of the education campaign will be to ensure that people understand what those locations are. In addition to those locations, there are other restrictions with respect to distances in relationship to certain fixed objects like curbs, intersections, other sidewalk vendors, the special event permit areas like the farmers markets and street fairs, freeway ramps, schools during specific times. Recreation areas, we're trying to make sure that vending is taking place while those recreation areas are open, so we want to have consistency between the operating hours and the vending hours. For roaming and stationary vending, we want to allow roaming in residential areas between 8 and sunset, no stationary vending in residential areas, no stationary vending in recreation areas if there's a concessions agreement for exclusive concessions agreement for food and merchandise. The vending equipment itself also has a series of restrictions. You can see it, really they're all designed to make sure we have safe vending equipment on our right-of-ways. There's a series of items that are prohibited from sales, alcohol, drugs, of course, weapons, pharmaceuticals, animals, stolen merchandise. The tiered administrative fine structure in our proposed ordinance tracks the state law with one exception. For both permitted and non-permitted vendors, we are including a warning issued for the first violation. So if you have a first violation, you'll get a written warning, and then we go into the tiered structure of fines. Again, there'll be no financial enhancements to any failure to pay that are not permitted under state law. There will be an ability to pay determination. Notice will be given of that opportunity at the citation. The hearing will be conducted by the city manager's office or designee, and if the applicant can meet specific income criteria, then there will be a reduction in whatever that fine is. Of course, the vendor will have an appeal right under the code. In addition to the introduction of the new Chapter 9, Article 9, pardon me, there are old vestiges of sidewalk vending ordinances in our code. For example, Section 18-101 is vintage 2000, which is long out of date. We have some others that are from around 2014 or so. So as part of the cleanup of the code, we're going to introduce Article 9, but we're going to also repeal and amend these to include a reference to our new code. The other local programs in San Diego, there's a mixed kind of way cities are handling this. Some have insurance permits and regulations, some have no insurance, some have no permits or insurance, and then some have no ordinance whatsoever, kind of where we were. When you look at the overall benefits of the program, we would submit, and I think the Economic Development Subcommittee believes, that there are a known and established program which can be publicized and can allow for vendor education, allows for a consistent enforcement approach, gives you legitimate control over health and safety issues, it protects pedestrian access and travel paths. There's certain limited protections for special permit areas, swap meets, farmer markets, and concessionaires, and there's a potential for improvement to the customer experience in our parks. So the recommended action is to adopt ordinance number 282604, direct staff to develop an application and permit, as well as direct staff to develop the guidelines and an education campaign. And Jennifer and I are available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have public comments?
No public comments, but you can close the public hearing.
All right, the public hearing is closed. I don't have any questions for, actually I do. I take that back. Where'd it go? There's one section here that a few people have reached out to me, and it's under section 16, number 11, and it's within 500 feet of any private or public K through 12 school. And it has been pointed out by multiple people that that is sometimes the customer base for whatever vendor is there. And I was just curious, is there a science to the 500 feet, or is that something the council could change if we wanted?
There is no science to that. That was, we've looked around trying to find comparable locations and regulations, so that is something that you have control over.
Okay. Is there any reason why we shouldn't just make it, I can't do it directly in front of that school, just off to the side? I don't know how you specify that, but just not blocking the entrance and exits to the school, things like that?
We could, would 100 feet, and
Yeah.
not to argue about it, but trying to find what that location point would be, so you're doing exactly what you're describing.
Okay.
500 feet is a fairly large buffer. I'll agree with you.
Okay, yeah, so here's what I'll do then. I'll go ahead and move to approve with one amendment to that section, changing the 500 to 100. Motion and second. And before I turn it over, this item, this is fascinating to me because outside of like homelessness, this is the one thing that people reach out to me about all the time. And on one hand, you've got people who just want street vending banned entirely. And on the other hand, there's a decent amount of people who think it should just be the Wild West. But I think that this lands kind of in the sweet spot. If you compare this proposed ordinance to some of the other cities, I think we're quite a bit less restrictive, in particular with the insurance part of that. But yeah, anyways, motion's been made, second. Thank you both, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues.
I have some questions. Thank you. Since you mentioned, Mayor, since you mentioned the distance from the school, I was actually thinking about the schools, but going back to how, gosh, where was it exactly? Well, it had to do with getting the permits. We can't ask for ID. I absolutely understand that, and the only thing required would be the city ID that is given to them. But I was also curious, because we can't ask about their criminal history, which made me think about the schools and the parkways. So how do we protect the kids at the schools and the parks from potential sexual predators that may be registered if we can't ask for that? How do we, it just came to mind today. I know we discussed this at the Economic Subcommittee, but this is one thing I didn't think about then until now. How would...
Well, if the registered sex offender has already requirements with respect to being in proximity to a school, that would be one thing that they would be in violation of their own parole or probation conditions, their registration conditions. So that's one constraint to that. I don't know if we can do that through here.
Yeah, I guess it would just be up to the police department to follow. Okay, thank you for that. I know that was just something that came to mind regarding protecting the kids and having somebody so close to school that could potentially be a predator. I want to say good job on, gosh, where is it? The fine schedule, because we did discuss at the subcommittee that it seemed very steep, but you came up with just a really good ability for them to be able to pay or a way around it by providing the hearings. I think it was on slide 23, so I just want to commend you on that. I think that was really good. And let's see, one more question on, well, actually a couple questions. So on the permits, so we were talking about that every vendor or every person at one of these pop-ups or even the carts would require a business permit. What if it is one business owner that has many and their employees? Are they going to require, because I understand there's a couple out there that it's an owner that owns several and he drops people off. Now, are those individual employees required to also have a business permit?
So over the next several months, staff will work to create the permit for this, and part of that process will be talking to the existing vendors to understand what their needs are.
Okay.
As it's written today, every individual will need a business license. Because there is no physical location, they need a business license to operate where they are. And then they will need an ID for their individual vending, because that's the signal that they have read the requirements and agreed to adhere to them. If we encounter multiple situations where there is a business that has many vendors, then we'll have to evaluate what is the best practice for ensuring that each of those vendors does have their own ID as well, and they're all associated with the same business account. So until we have an opportunity to do the community outreach, to talk with the vendors, we won't know which is the best path to take. but we're ready to have that conversation with the community.
Okay, thank you. So you're already prepared. Thank you. Another thing too, let's see here, on outreach. So, I liked how you stated, we're trying to create a pathway for retail vendors to grow into permanent locations and the economic development opportunities to the low-income immigrant community. So with that, and also requiring, just the city ID, so putting all that together and thinking about the outreach, again, I think it's important to find out in those immigrant communities who those community leaders are that can maybe pass that information on, because they may be afraid to come and even seek out a permit if they don't have any ID or if they're undocumented. So, being able to communicate that way to help them get going and start a business. But other than that, I think it was really good. I really, again, I just really like how on slide 23, just the ability to have more options than paying the very steep fine if they're not able to. So thank you for your work.
So I was part of the subcommittee when we originally began discussing this. And I reached out to the advocates of those that, the street vendors, and a number of them came in. And I think we were all pleasantly surprised to realize that we had kind of found the sweet spot, as put earlier, where there was a lot of agreement. And in fact, one of the attorneys that was present had told me, wow, it seems like you had like a cheat sheet, that our own city attorney had like a cheat sheet. He knew all the questions that I was going to ask and had dealt with them. And they left very pleased with that. At that point, the policy went dormant for a while, and I was very interested to see how it came back, and it's come back pretty much the same, with the exception of the insurance. But other than that, I think we have a good policy that's been supported by the advocates of the vendors that came all the way from El Cajon and other areas in the county, spoke well to it, and I am pleased, and I'm glad that we have an opportunity to be able to continue to encourage this type of economic opportunity. So, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Let's see here. I'm going to just go through the ordinance. I'm glad to see that the insurance requirement was removed. I also had questions about the distance. Let's see. So under section 16-419 sidewalk vending locations, there are within 18 inches from the edge of a curb, within 50 feet from another sidewalk vendor, within 50 feet of a bus stop, within 100 feet of any vehicle entrance, and then the 500 feet of any private or public school. And just wondering, I know the mayor asked about the school specifically, but I'm wondering about the others. What was the thinking behind those specific numbers?
We looked at a lot of different statutes out there, or local regulations, and again, our effort was to try and find locations to make sure that you have access on the sidewalks, that you don't have people adjacent to curbs that could fall off. It's really a customer and a vendor consideration. So that's where they get. I don't know that I would describe it as any science behind it, but it was designed really to ensure that there are good paths of travel and safety.
Okay, thank you. Just some. I'm trying to find it in front of me, but I did look at national cities, and they had, between vendors, they had like a 10 feet difference, so kind of a big difference there between 50 feet and 10 feet. So, questions on that. I also wanted to ask, I know that this was discussed, so this was brought up a long time ago, a couple years ago. And the council member that brought this up is no longer here. And then this got sent to the Economic Development Committee, and there was a meeting in that committee. I'm not on that committee, so I was not there for those conversations. I did share when I heard about the meetings and encourage public to attend. And then it was a while before this came back. So can you share what was the community engagement piece in those meetings? Because my assumption was that the subcommittee would bring a draft, and then, I figured we would have community engagement sessions outside of the subcommittee structure to get input from sidewalk vendors and just the residents and business community, because a lot of times it's hard to know about these subcommittee meetings and people don't know that they can attend them. So I don't feel like that's a substitute for community engagement. And usually when we're going to pass an ordinance that's going to impact a business, we would want to have as much stakeholder input as possible. So can you share just what the process is, how many people participated, how many street vendors or food businesses were engaged in the drafting of this ordinance?
It's the most well-attended subcommittee meetings we've ever had.
Good to hear.
Second only to short-term rentals. So we had community meetings through the Economic Development Subcommittee where we posted those meetings publicly, and the most recent ones through social media channels as well, where we did have representatives for street vendors. We anticipate that the majority of our interaction related to the guidelines and making sure street vendors are coming on board will be out in the field with our economic development team, speaking with the street vendors that we have seen and identified. Mm-hmm. As we are going through the process of creating this ordinance with city staff, so far we only estimate about 15 vendors that are operating in the city right now, but because there's no permits for the vendors, we don't have an official number. So we will have an engagement process if this ordinance is adopted to go out and talk to the vendors and get them on board with the program to make sure they have the proper permits. As city staff, we want to ensure that if we're going through that process and we notice any major issues, that we can confer with the city attorney and come back to city council as necessary to make any amendments if we see that there are substantial issues with how it's written.
Can I add to that answer? The very first time this got brought up, there was, I want to say, close to 30 people in the room, and it was a very long meeting, and the group that was there had some legitimate concerns about what the policy was. What you're seeing now is about 50% of what was in that meeting, and at the very last subcommittee meeting, there was, I don't know, a dozen street vendors, something like that. And there was one last sticking point with one individual, and it was over whether or not to not have any fees for permits, which we did not agree to.
Okay, thank you for that information. It would be helpful to, so one of the things that I observed, and I understand the parks have like a sunrise to sunset hours of operation. I think just because of, it's easy, I would recommend instead of sunrise to sunset on some of these hours, or I think we have like roaming sidewalk vendors in section 16-421. It says roaming sidewalk vendors in residential areas may vend between the hours of 8 a.m. and sunset. I would like to include a time certain, just so it's consistent, since we're giving us an actual start time. So pick a time in the evening. Okay, I'm still kind of, I'm curious to know how the different measurements between the sidewalk. I think that that's easy to adjust as we have conversations and maybe, have those field visits. I do think the fees are on the high end because they are the max of what the state allows, but I do appreciate that there's a warning first. So that was a concern that I had the first time, and I saw that was incorporated, so I appreciate that. And that there's ways, whether it's community service or other ways, to pay 20% of the fees. So I'm okay with that. The one thing that I am uncomfortable with at the moment is the requirement of the ID. And do we know what the permit fee would be? So there's a business license. I don't know what the range is for a street vendor, or I don't know if you have like an actual number, if it's gonna depend on the kind of business it is, but if you have a range, that would be helpful. And then do you have a range or a proposed amount for what the seller's permit would be for a street vendor? I'm trying to add on all the different fees they're gonna potentially have, right? Because it's not a very lucrative business at the moment. It's, you know, some people sell ice cream and they make maybe 50 cents on the ice cream, right, that they sell, so.
This program is not designed to be cost recovery, so we'll be evaluating the fees of neighboring cities and ensure that ours are in line with neighboring cities.
Okay, so at the moment, we don't have numbers, right?
Correct,
Okay.
but they'll be coming back as part of the fee schedule
Okay.
for council with the additional, with the other city fees.
Right, so the council will be able to adopt the fee and understand how that fee was derived.
Okay, so we could still, those won't go into effect until we actually approve those then? The permit fees?
I'm sorry, say again?
So those won't actually go into effect until we separately approve a fee schedule?
Yes, there's no sidewalk vending permit fee in our schedule.
Okay. Yeah, and so the one thing that, the biggest, I think, issue for me, and the one that I don't see other cities have, is the ID part. So I'm trying to think, so I did talk to our economic development director, and I did talk to our city attorney about this, and I did also reach out to the Cook Alliance. They work a lot with Micos and micro entrepreneurs in the food space, just to kind of see, hey, have you heard about an ID for vending? And they hadn't. So I'm trying to think of why we would require that when we don't require that for business license. And I definitely want to hear, for the public to hear the thought behind that. But my thought is, for example, when I go get my nails done, there has to be a business license, and they also have to have a cosmetology license to show that they can safely work on my cuticles and my nails. And usually the name of the cosmetology, you know, so my nail tech is Vietnamese, and her cosmetology license is in a Vietnamese name. However, she goes by Judy. So I call her Judy, but her name is in her Vietnamese, name that she was given at birth. But there's no photo next to that cosmetology license or that business license. So I'm wondering, in this way, it feels like we're singling out, street vendors by requiring them to have a badge. So if you could just speak to kind of the reasoning behind that, that would be helpful.
I'll take the first try at that.
Thank you.
I think probably the most difficult part of it is you have a mobile operation. If you have, like you're talking about your nail salon, it's a fixed location, it's a business license, you know where it is. But in that case where you have somebody moving, constantly moving, the opportunity to have a permitted, the license with them allows for the potential for enforcement, because you're not going to know who that person is. So I think that was principally what we were looking at. As well, we want to make sure that we don't have code compliance officers asking for identification from the vendors in the field. What we'd like to do is be working off of that issued seller's permit. So you don't have to deal with that part of it. So in other words, all of the work is being done on the back side of it, understanding who that person is. So for purposes of enforcement, you'd be able to know who that person is if you're going to be issuing the citation. I think that's different than when you have a fixed brick and mortar location.
So when someone registers for a business license, they have to provide an address, right? Where they would receive the license, because the license comes in the mail. Is that correct?
The license is available online to print.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it doesn't get mailed, yeah. So, yeah, I'm just trying to, I guess I'm not seeing the connection. I understand the part about you don't want the vulnerability of them being out in public and possibly getting questioned. I think regardless of whether they're mobile or at a fixed location, I still don't see the need for the ID. That's still something that I don't necessarily feel we need to do. Ideally, I know my colleagues already made a motion for this. Ideally, I would like to, this is a good draft, by the way. I don't have, I think I appreciate the effort that went into it. So it's not a bad ordinance. I don't want anyone to think that. But I would prefer that before we adopt it, that we actually go out and start talking to the vendors before we adopt it, and then make any changes that could be needed. I would feel more comfortable doing that versus, supporting it as it is now, because I'm still not sold on the actual photo ID, and I also want to explore some of these the distances between them. So I would like to have the community engagement input first before we actually pass the ordinance. So it would still give us I know the runway is a little long, so this is going to go into effect in January of next year. So I feel like we could still go out and do the engagement piece, and then draft what the permit fees would be, what the permit application would be. I feel like that needs to happen first before we do that versus the order of it. So I will support it if we can pass it as a draft and not an actual ordinance, and then do the community engagement piece first before actually adopting it. Usually that's what we do before we adopt an ordinance. That's all. That's my comments.
I have a follow-up question for you. So you mentioned the times. I don't see anything in here that gives an AM, PM.
Yeah.
I think for recreation, it's the hours of the park, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
But for the roaming sidewalk one, that one says sunset. And that one says 8 a.m. to sunset.
If you look at section 16-421A, roaming sidewalk vendors in residential areas may vend between the hours of 8 a.m. and sunset. I believe that's what.
Yeah, so it gives
Councilmember-
a start time, but that it doesn't give an end time. It just says sunset. So that can depend on the season, right? So it would be nice to pick a time, whether it's 7 p.m.
What time are you proposing?
I mean, maybe 7 p.m. Again, like I said, I'd like to have it as a draft so then we can
Even
get some
that's
input and then we can adopt it.
Well, is that time set there for safety reasons? Because it's sunset, is it a well-lit street? Are people going to be gathering and potentially maybe, it would be a traffic
I don't know
danger
why sunset
issue?
was
So
chosen, so I didn't.
I'm
draft
just
the-
thinking because of,
I didn't draft the ordinance.
whether or not it's a lit area, just for public safety, to have them be out there in the dark and traffic's going by and not seeing them, not expecting to see people there. I just thought it was for safety reasons.
Yeah, I don't
Okay,
know.
I think I got something.
But it's
I'm
just
onto
good because
something.
yeah,
Um,
it's just kind of abstract, right?
8 a.m.
That's
to
our-
8 p.m. with the caveat that there needs to be a light after
If
dark?
it's dark.
We can draft that.
Okay.
So what do my colleagues think as far as having it as a draft and then coming back to adopt it after some, doing some more input?
Well, the
Taking
thing
it
is,
outside the committee.
we had more input in the subcommittee than any other time before. With street vendors, not just from Escondido, but all over the county, who have already read this. And like I said, the only sticking point at the end was having no fees for licenses, which we weren't open to at that time. So I'm okay if we pass it tonight. But if anybody else wants to speak up.
And if we do, are you okay? Are you comfortable removing the ID part right now?
Yeah, so how do you tie the business to the person? Because it says it's non-transferable, so if no ID has been shown, how do you know who holds the permit?
You're talking about the business license or
Yeah.
the seller's permit? So the
Well,
seller's
either.
permit's going to have a photograph, and it's going to be based on the application of the vendor. And part of that was to ensure that when the code compliance officer is talking to somebody, they know who they're talking to, and that the citation can properly identify the person that is potentially in violation.
Okay, the
So
seller's permit.
That's that connection.
The seller's permit is done through the state or us?
Through us.
Through us. How do we, if no ID is shown, just walk me through the process of getting a seller's permit.
A government-issued ID will be made through an application to our economic development or whoever will be doing this in our business license group. and they will intake that application, find out what type of sales they're going to be doing, what type of equipment they'll have, make sure that they have any other notifications we want to give them about making sure that they have the proper equipment and seller's license, the CDTFA, as well as the county health permit. So there's the intake of that information. That's when the identification takes place. That individual who has made that application will get that seller's permit. And that seller's permit must be displayed by that vendor when they're on the street.
And let's say one cart is rotated through, well, I guess it's the same business at that point.
Whoever's at that cart needs to have that seller's permit.
Correct. You're right. I don't know. What does everybody else think?
I just, thank you, Mayor. I just don't understand how we would enforce it if there's no way to have identification. I mean, who are we providing the violation to? Who are we speaking with? And I would rather have something that they have on hand as opposed to asking for another type of ID or start interrogating. I think it's just a very streamlined, safe way of doing it without having to, well, like I said, without having to interrogate. It's already streamlined. They're already in the system. They're working with the city without having to worry about county or state identification or anything. So I think it's a lot more, I think it's safer. I think it's more streamlined. And I think that because they're already in the system, we're not having to worry about identifying with using identification from other people.
I'm in agreement with that as well, especially if it's a shared kind of pop-up or whatever. You want to hold that person that's there that day accountable if it's their thing.
Question for you, Jennifer. As you're going through the education process, if this is an actual problem, can you bring it back to us and then we can consider amending it at that time?
Yes, absolutely. We'll make sure to record the interactions we have with the businesses and understand if there's limitations to them enrolling in the program and receiving their permits.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I have, so with the discussion, and I'm thinking about some questions regarding this. When somebody applies for a permit, is it fairly normal to ask for an ID for the person that is applying? They come here to the city, or they go to any city, they go to the county, do they normally do that? And it's at that point that they get an ID because they show who they are in order to apply.
You can apply online, but you do not need to upload your personal driver's license. But you do need to show affiliation with the business, such as a doing business as.
Okay.
Yeah, so in no other circumstances do we ask for IDs for business licenses, which is what I'm getting at, is we're asking for an extra step. And I also was thinking, as my colleagues were deliberating, I'm thinking of something else. With Councilmember Fitzgerald's question about what if you have one business but you have various people, right, within the same business? I'm under the assumption that the seller's permit, I know it's not full cost recovery, so we're having to pay out of the general fund for this, right? We're not making money off this process, right? So then if you have one business, let's just say Chato's Hot Dogs, and you have five employees, that's 5 different IDs that you're gonna give. So like, does each ID have to pay the seller permit? Or is it like one business that pays the permit fee and then, and the reason I wanna hold off on this, I'm not opposed to it, is I feel like that's something that could be added. I'd rather us add that later as we see, hey, there's a problem. Because right now, what I'm kind of hearing of why we have it there is there's kind of this, and I'm not saying that this is staff's or my colleagues' assumption, but but it seems like there is kind of an underlying assumption that there's gonna be dishonest business owners, and so we have to prove they are who they are. And I don't think that that's the case, and we don't ask that for other businesses. So that's why for me, it doesn't feel right to require that at this time. I'm not opposed to adding it in the future should a problem arise, and then we're going out of the way of doing something that we don't do for other businesses because we're trying to solve an issue. But right now, it seems like we're doing this when there's really not an issue, right? I don't foresee people are going to lie. First of all, I feel like if somebody doesn't want to work within the system, they're not even going to apply for a business license, right? They're not even going to bother to pay they're just going to pop up in their, their business, and they're not going to apply for a business license. They're not going to pay taxes or whatever if they don't want to work within the system. Those that want to work within the system have no reason not to say who they are, have no reason to not give a reliable address. So that's where it doesn't feel right for me. So I do support the majority of the ordinance. I think is a good draft. I would like to get more input on it, and I appreciate the effort of my colleagues in doing this. I appreciate you listening to the feedback and incorporating those in your draft changes, such as like the no insurance. So your remarks show that you are sensitive to remarks that have been shared in the past with you. So I'm very grateful for that. The only thing for me is that just the license piece, the extra ID part, I can't support at this time. So I don't know how we want to handle that, but yeah, it just seems very out of the ordinary, and I'm okay maybe considering that at a future time, but not starting that process now and then taking it away. That's also going to take staff resources and time if we're going to invest in a system that's going to print photo IDs.
Follow-up question for you. The ID is not for the business license, correct? It's for the seller's permit?
Correct. So,
And there's got to be more people in the city with seller's permits. Are they asked for ID when they come in?
so every person operating a business within the city is required to obtain a business license. If you have a specialty type of business, you may be required to have a different type of permit. So this would be a sidewalk vending permit in addition to a business license. So when it comes to enforcement or questions of business operations, within the city's digital systems, we have record of a physical location for all retail businesses, so that if a code enforcement officer replies to a complaint, they can check our system, see the location, and confirm whether or not that business has a business license and their required permits.
So do all specialty permits require ID, or is this one unique?
This one is unique because there's not a physical location tied to the business, because they are roaming or they do not have an address. They're in a public right-of-way.
Will but the business license has the address on it, correct?
The business license can be tied to their personal address, but it won't be displayed because that is restricted from the from being released to the public.
Yeah, okay, but that answers my question. So we have record of the business name and the address, so if a violation does need to be sent, we have a place to send it.
Correct, and it's important to know whether or not that person is associated with the business.
Okay. So here's what I'll do. I'll amend my motion to include no need for ID, because it sounds like we still have a way to locate where to send violations.
One comment I'll add is that as staff was reviewing the operational requirements for this program when it came to code enforcement, there was previous instances of a code officer needing to check for ID of the individual vending. And so one of the thought process and intention was to remove the need for a code officer to request ID on site and instead look at the city's issued ID. So as staff, we can go back and revisit what the potential use cases are, and we can see when that team requires ID.
Can I add something to what you're saying, Mayor?
Please do.
So instead of removing it, I think maybe we can, let's look into it. I don't think it should be removed because, again, it's not a brick and mortar, and I think that ID serves to show that they are in compliance or that they do have the permit, because they're not going to be putting their business license, as you were saying, as a brick and mortar would. So maybe we should just have more discussion and give staff an opportunity to provide the research as far as why they came to suggest this?
Let's do this. I made an amendment, asked for an amendment to my motion. Do you?
I'll second it.
Okay.
To
I think
your
we've gotten this
request.
far, and this has been in the works for this long. I would still like to know the same thing as you're going about it, if that would be an issue or not, but otherwise, I'm fine with that. So the motion is to approve with the 500-foot from schools taken down to 100 and no need for personal identification.
Does your motion include the time, the 8 to 8 that you mentioned?
And the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. with a light after dark. And if you need me to repeat that, I'm happy to.
Can I request a clarification?
Sure.
On the ID? So are you referring, could you clarify, is it no ID required to apply, or is it no picture on an ID that is carried with them when they are vending?
Well, here's the thing. This is how it works in my head, right? So you go and you apply for a business license. The name of the business is going, that can replace the person's name on the ID, and it can still have a photo. That way, it's pretty much verified. Does that make sense?
Can you say that again?
Instead of putting the person's name on the ID, put the name of the business, but still with a photo. Because the business name is tied to an address where notices can be sent.
So can I
So
ask,
wait, you still want a photo then?
A photo? Yeah. On the ID? On
Yeah,
the
I
personal
thought you
one?
said you don't want an ID.
No, you're still going to have the city-issued ID with the business name on it instead of the individual's name.
Oh, I thought you were saying no ID.
No need for a federal ID.
No, that's already not part of it. I was talking about.
I thought it was
No,
for the seller's permit.
it is because they're going to issue the photo ID.
Yeah,
I'm not in favor of the city ID.
Any government-issued ID can be
Which
used.
is why I want to do this as a draft, but
In order
it's
to-
all right if you guys don't
No,
agree.
if that's the case, then I'll take back that amendment. I'll keep the one for the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., but leave the identification thing as is. So the motion is to approve
Yeah,
this
mine's no ID.
with take the school distance down to 100 from 500, change the times to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. with just a requirement for some sort of light after dark. Was there another one?
so can I ask a clarification about the light?
Yes.
So is the light provided by the vendor, or is the light in a public space light? Because I'm a little concerned about that, creating that I think part of the reason for sunrise to sundown is that mirrors the park's opening hours, which means somebody on the code team does not have to differentiate. We're trying to keep this simple in terms of application. So we know when the parks are open and closed, and so I am a bit concerned about deviating from the opening hour. I'm okay with saying the opening hours of the park. What I'm a little concerned about is creating these nuances that become particular to a particular setting, and now create a challenge in enforcement because it's reflective of a discussion about where a light is in proximity to where a vendor is. I think the reason this existed was because the parks have a set opening hour and a closing, and the closing happens, so there should be nobody in the park at the closure.
Well, the park will still be closed, right? But what about the rest of the city?
So again, I think this is in relationship to
Residential areas.
residential areas. So again, I'm okay with residential areas, but I'm concerned about what are we talking about in terms of who's supplying the light, where is the light? That becomes a little bit of a challenge. Where's the proximity to the light? I'm a little concerned about the light part. Not necessarily 8 p.m. in residential being a closed shutdown, but tracking to a light source. That can become a speculative space.
I tend to agree with you, except for the issue with this in particular is there's really not a whole lot of street vending going on in parks anyways. It's the rest of the city. and to limit food vendors to dark when it gets dark at like 5:30.
I'm okay with the time. I'm more concerned about the requirement of where a light is and how we get to how the proximity. I'm okay with a clear-cut 8 p.m. being the time that you cannot do in a residential area. What I'm concerned about is the tying to a light source and who's providing said light
Could we
source.
not just say something generic like the cart needs to be illuminated?
We're happy to come back with suggestions. I'm just a little worried
That's
about
a draft.
illumination and defining illumination.
Because I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
May I just propose a little bit to that? So if it's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., provided that there's daylight, so you're not talking about the light source being artificial street lights, is that what you're talking about or trying to achieve? So there's still light, ambient light outside? Or does that even help?
So I heard the mayor say you shouldn't be punished for being dark outside, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying if it's a fixed time, which we can always adapt to, I'm just worried about tracking to a light source. How do we measure?
So you're saying keep the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., but just remove the requirement for a light?
That's what I'm requesting.
I can deal with that.
Okay.
Do you need me to repeat the motion again?
Not for me.
Okay. Did you have one more thing?
No, I also wanted to push back a little bit on the light issue. I didn't know if it was just made more sense to do sunrise to sunset, but I understand what you're saying where during the winter hours it might be like 5 o'clock, and that might not make too much sense in order to also address the complexity of the lighting issue. I think that was a way to deal with it, but sounds like we already did.
Just one more thing too that I just want to put out there, because a lot of street vendors operate in my district, and a lot of them set up at night, and they do have lights. So then I didn't see anything in the ordinance that talks about not being allowed. So, and they're on, the public street. So some of them are on private land. This is not for private. So we haven't talked about that. But I appreciate the conversation and the deliberations, because this is why I wanted to have a draft, and then because there's a lot of things that we continue to think of as we're deliberating with each other. It's like, oh, I didn't think about this. Oh, I didn't think about that. I think that's kind of what I was getting at, is holding off, saying this is our draft, doing a little more work on it, and then coming back, because I think what we're going to discover is we're going to have a lot more aha moments. We're like, oh, we didn't think about this, we didn't think about that. So one thing I'd like to know, for example, is what happens to the hot dog vendor in my district who sets up lights at night? There's no mention about lights being illegal. So is he not eligible for a permit? So those are the kind of questions I have. That's why I feel like it's a good starting point, but I feel like there needs to be a little more. And I think once we go out and talk to the vendors and when they're vending, we'll probably think of a lot more to add. So I was just trying to make it more streamlined, so we're not having to make 5 amendments. So that's why I was wanting to hold off. But thank you, colleagues, for the thoughtful deliberations.
So just for clarity, if we approve this tonight, this is coming back after you do the community engagement, and we can at that time make whatever changes. Because we were talking about lights, I was thinking like bicycle lights, like brake lights in the back and lights in the front. I mean, what were we talking about? So I think there are a lot of questions that we need to deal with, and I would like to hear the input, but I want to make sure that if we do approve it tonight, it is coming back and we can make the amendments necessary in order to get this as cleaned up as best as possible.
Well, we can always bring it back, and as we report out on our efforts on the guidelines and the education campaign and talk to more vendors, we might find that there are certain things. We will bring that back for an amendment. But right now, it's up for your vote. It'll come up for a second read. But we can make the commitment that we'll bring something back if we're finding that we're having those difficulties.
We're committed to creating a program that works for maximum number of vendors. And as an economic developer that works with businesses all the time, speaking to every business, they have different ways of operating. So we'll ensure to look for trends and see any barriers for entry to make sure that this is a program that enables entrepreneurs to be successful in the city with the health and safety guidelines.
And the time, because there are vendors that currently, they do have lights and stuff, and it's great because they need them. It's already dark. But we're talking 9, 10 o'clock at night, they're still out there. Does this all of a sudden make that illegal for them to be working at that time?
It'll depend on what area they're in, and although the ordinance will be effective after the second read, I don't believe we're going to do any enforcement until we have completed a good education campaign, made sure the guidelines were in place, ensure that we have hearing officers. So I think there's a fair amount of work that needs to take place before there's really any enforcement here.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and move this forward. It has a motion and second and no further discussion, so please vote.
And one point of clarification, just I want to make sure, because there was an element where I want to make sure, Councilmember Christian Garcia, you do second the amendment, because there was a final amendment where he removed some language. I just want to make sure you.
Read that amendment, those
Okay.
amendments one more time.
So it's from 500 feet to 100 feet for the schools. It's from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for the lighting, and then a removal of the light requirement. And that is also what we're going to have for, those are the two primary.
8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in residential areas.
In residential areas, thank you, yeah. I just wanted to make sure you were
Just
okay
those
with that.
two amendments.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's,
Oh,
go ahead.
no, the city-issued ID only has the language of the business, not the name of the individual.
No, I took back that part of the amendment. We were just going to stick
You took
with
that all the way together? Okay, I just want to make
So-
sure.
okay.
All right,
Will you
perfect.
say it one more time, please?
Okay, so 100 feet
everybody's on the same
for
page.
schools, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in residential areas, and you did not proceed with the city-issued ID.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, please vote.
Motion approved, 3-2. Councilmember Martinez, no, and Deputy Mayor Joe Garcia, no.
All right, that takes us to our next public hearing, and this is to approve the amendment to the 25 through 29 Consolidated Plan, an actual annual action plan to expand and increase home funding for the rental subsidy program.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name's Danielle Lopez. I'm your Housing and Neighborhood Services Manager, and with me this evening is Norma O'Keen, Management Analyst over the Home Program. On the agenda tonight will be a brief background on the Home Program, the proposed amendment to the 2025-2026 Home Funds, discussion and recommendation. I'd like to point out that there will be two home items before you this evening. Both are substantial amendments, but from two different activities and from two different funding sources. The first item will be the second public hearing regarding the substantial amendment to the 25-26 home funding to expand the rental subsidy program. And the latter will be the first of two public hearings regarding a second substantial amendment to the 25-29 Consolidated Plan and 25-26 Annual Action Plan for the use of home funds that will expire in 2026. Again, the purpose of this meeting is to hold the second public hearing to approve the proposed substantial amendment to expand the rental subsidy program. This slide is just showing you a summary of the amendment based on council direction at the January 28th public hearing. We'll get into a little bit of background on the next few slides. So this slide serves as a reminder of what home funds can be used for, as well as the reaffirmed Consolidated Plan priorities. The proposed amendment is in line with the first priority listed here to support the development and preservation of affordable rental and home ownership units. Here we have what we've done up to date. On October 15th, the City Council received an in-depth presentation on the status of the home program. At that meeting, staff were directed to explore the expansion of home programming and bring back proposals for consideration. On January 22nd, staff hosted a community meeting to introduce the proposed substantial amendment. 2 members of the community attended and both supported the expansion of the rental subsidy program. On January 28th, 2026, the first of 2 public hearings was held to provide options on the expansion of the home program. At that meeting, council directed staff to focus on the rental subsidy program. We had 4 speakers at this meeting, and to summarize, they supported the expansion of the program, wanted us to open up the program to all ages, develop preferences for people experiencing homelessness, and use income-based subsidies versus a flat rate assistance. On January 29th through February 27th was the 30-day public comment period. We received 2 comments. Both suggested that we expand the beneficiaries to include those transitioning from shelters to permanent housing, and that the plan clearly stated such, to potentially increase the subsidy amount above the $400, and to improve the public comment process. And that brings us to today, the second public hearing. We received 6 comments prior to the meeting today, all with the same sentiment as above, including expanding the beneficiaries to include those transitioning from shelters, increasing the subsidy amount, and improving the public comment process. So this last slide here is a summary of the amendment per council direction, which significantly reallocates funding to the rental subsidy program. The rental subsidy program was originally budgeted at $72,000. We're recommending increasing that to $388,000. That allows the number of people that we serve to increase from 30 to 80. In addition to the funding increase, we'll be increasing the subsidy amount from $200 to $400, depending on $200 to $400, depending on the household's area, median income, or AMI. So houses at lower AMI would receive a higher subsidy. For example, a household at 30% AMI would receive the full $400. A household at 60% or less would receive $300. Next, we would increase the number of households, like I said, from 30 to 80. We are proposing opening the program up to all ages, and we are removing the requirement of being on the Section 8 wait list because, as mentioned at a previous meeting, that wait list has been put on hold. So that concludes staff's presentation, and we ask that you open up the public hearing, receive comments, and then bring it back for council and staff discussion. Thank you.
Do we have public comments on this
Yes,
item?
we have a few for this item. Our first speaker is Merjan. Merjan? Yeah, thank you.
So, good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Merjana Rodriguez. I work for Escondido Education Compact. You've seen me here before, but I think that I just wanted to comment and support the work that your team is doing and say, and express our being in favor and really feeling like this is in the community's best interest. And I wanted to color that with some of what we're seeing. We received an allocation here from the CDBG CEB, so the coronavirus aid, to assist with utility assistance and rental assistance, and we enacted that in November of last year. And we have already seen 50 households that have received that assistance, 200 more households that our team is, working through that process of screening them and making sure that, we're getting all the eligibility documents. And so I just wanted to say, this is something that your community desperately needs, right? It's a huge, and I don't even necessarily think I need to tell you that because you see it. You see it when we drive it by. You see it, I'm sure you're hearing it from your constituents. Another thing that I think is really important to us is we're typically a youth and family servicing agency. But an interesting metric that my team informed me of is our average head of household right now is they're aged at 50. And so that's an interesting consideration when you're looking at some of these, expanding the resources is great, and making sure that there is, that you're expanding the pool of who can benefit from these funds, but also, acknowledging all the work that we're doing for our aging residents to making sure that we're increasing what affordable housing, options that they have, because they are on such a, fixed income. And so I just wanted to, thank, again, the work and really be in support of this, and ask that you would consider this, this increase. I know that when we're looking at budgets, those are, sometimes hard to do, but, this is a desperate need in our community. Your community is, I think right now, more than ever, economically, that we're struggling, and we have an aging population. And so if we can support the residents that have been supporting this community for so long and have been chose to stay in this community and raise their family in this community, I think that we would really greatly appreciate that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Marjan. Our next speaker is Victoria Nayak.
Hi, everyone. So at first, I want to say I really do appreciate the openness and to the idea of expanding the rental subsidies that the residents have presented and asked for. I do appreciate that this is a bit substantial over what was being offered before, but that being said, it is still kind of off the mark. Well, the $400, I just want to give you a little bit of perspective. Somebody at 30% AMI, which is extremely low income, which is the target of keeping people out of homelessness. For a family of 4, before taxes, that's $49,600. That's about $50,000. So monthly, they're getting, after taxes, about $3,500 a month. Rent is almost $3,000. That's actually, for a family of 4, it's going to be $3,000 or over. I pay $3,300. A $400 subsidy on that doesn't leave much room for help. So the people that are going to need that, I don't know if they're going to actually be able to use it, because unless you give them something else, they're not going to be able to afford that rent with the $400 subsidy. So it's not going to prevent them from being homeless if that's what it's coming to for them. Also, so this tenant-based rental assistance program is intended for the pipeline to get people off the street and into permanent housing. That being said, a $400 subsidy isn't going to do that. And so while I do think it's great what's being done, I think if we don't critically look at what still needs to be done and have difficult conversations about what hasn't been done, we're not going to get to the point where we've solved homelessness and we can high five and go home. And so in the spirit of having difficult conversations, I'm going to keep coming and reminding everybody when these votes come up that this is the focus we need to have. I know that there's been comments of being in affordable housing isn't supposed to be permanent, and it's not. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try and use it as a temporary bridge to get people off the streets. And I also, the second point I wanted to make is I wanted to say thank you to the staff for really being open to all our suggestions about the public comment and commenting on that and being in communication. I know I've been kind of a pain in the butt about it, and I will own that. That's okay. So thank you very much, and I hope we can keep this into consideration, because this type of a subsidy is really needed to house the homeless people in Escondido that need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Amelia.
Thank you. May I ask a quick question? Was in the packet, did it have extremely low income as a category, or was it just low income as a category?
It's
for
low
applicants?
and extremely low.
Oh, okay. I thought I only had read that it was low, so I was here to say, why wasn't extremely low included? So that was my whole first half, was why wasn't extremely low included? That being said, again, thank you for the mayor and the city council for listening to the community by amending the home fund increase, the dollar amount, and expand the number of applicants and include parameters that previously disqualified applicants under the previous plan. Then I had my whole spiel about why it wasn't extremely low income included. Additionally, because of the lack of access to technology for some of these applicants, if the city would like to get the word out regarding a beneficial program such as this, I'd like to suggest doing a better job of advertising it. In addition to the plain, simple posts that we see the city put on social media, maybe posting more of a downloadable PDF flyer in English and in Spanish that people can post on their own social medias, post on billboards, things like that. And so that was my spiel. Thank you very much.
No further public comments on this item.
All right, I'll close this public hearing. Yeah, I talked to a few different people about this, a couple of different nonprofits who do these rental assistance programs, and they all basically said the exact same thing. It's not very helpful at a $400 amount, but more like a $1,000 amount. So I'll say that and turn it over to my colleagues.
Thank you so much for the presentation. This has been a lot of work, and we've been putting in a lot of hours and thought into it. And that is the only thing that I think what the public comments have said and what the mayor just echoed. I don't know what the magic number is. I don't know if it's $1,000. I don't know if it's 25%. What I would like to see is if there's perhaps, if we could analyze what other assistance is out there. So if we're looking at federal funds, federal assistance, state assistance, whatever kind of assistance there is, and then if we were able to fill in that gap for the average person. I mean, it'd be nice to say, all right, we have a $3,000 assistance if we're going to help out, a family of 4, but I just want to know what is reasonable if the average person that is, let's say, extremely low income or low income, if they are receiving assistance from different programs, what would the city need to do in order to fill that gap? And again, I just don't know if 1,000 is the correct number or if 700 or 600 is.
So council, I'll let staff speak to it, but I think one of the challenges is there's a finite resource here, right? And so we are open to, as we go through this experientially, coming back and doing further amendments based on experience. So I want to make that very clear, just like the prior conversation, that we won't sit around and wait. We will measure that. But a little bit is, I understand, but it's also the finiteness of it. As we go through it, we are open to, in the future, amending the process as we see the results of the program.
And I understand that too, and that's why I wanted to know, I don't know what the magic number is, and to your point, I think there's some analysis that needs to be done as we go through the process. And I would like to see what that number is, and even if we are serving fewer people, but at the same time, we also saw how many people were waiting on Section 8 or assistance, I think, with the last meeting. So there's a lot to consider, and like I said, I'd be open to increasing the amount. I just don't know what that number is, and I think we need to look into it just a little bit more, even if it means serving fewer people.
Yeah, and I just want to say I hear what you're saying. There's kind of two sides to this. Number one is helping as many people as possible, and then the other side is providing the maximum benefit to somebody who needs it. So I hear what you're saying. I just wanted to clarify that.
I had a question for Mirjana about just to give me an idea of kind of how much. I know you all are doing the rental assistance program. What are the average amounts? If you can come to the mic real quick. What are the average amounts that you all are seeing, what's the average amount of the rental assistance you're giving to give us an idea? Because it looks like you have a very high demand.
Yeah, so I think the one thing that I would kind of differentiate is that we can assist up to 3 months.
Okay.
So
how much is that?
So you're looking anywhere between 600 to 6,000, and some of that I think is also compounded with if they do get some assistance, kind of to your point, Christian, they might be getting some HUD assistance, but their utilities are also billed in their rental, and so they might be getting assistance through one, but they're behind on the utility billing, and they're not able to support that, and so then that continues to cause a problem because it's compounded, and so Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's a tricky mix.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I forgot that you're also helping with utilities, so it's not just rent.
Yes.
So, yeah, I definitely would love to have, I do appreciate the number being increased. I would like to serve the maximum amount of people and also give them the maximum amount of money, right? I'm curious to know, kind of in the past when we have had like the senior rental assistance program, is there any follow-up done to know if that helped keep people housed, or like did you hear like, oh, I need 1,000 but I'll take 300 even though I really need 1,000? Any kind of like insight to kind of people's situations?
We've definitely heard that they could always use more, that it is a small amount. At the time, prior to last year, it was only $150 or, so we have definitely heard that it wasn't enough, but they were happy to get what they were getting.
Okay.
So.
Okay, yeah, and I would definitely, see how we can continue to increase, so yeah, I hear you and I agree with everything that my colleagues have said, that the public commenters have said. I would like to, because I feel like we are gonna have, remind me how many people, if we were to keep it at these numbers, how many people would we help?
80
Potentially?
households.
80 households, yeah. I feel like that we would easily get to 80 people. So I'm okay keeping it this way and maybe seeing how we can continue to, meet the demand, but this will be, an experiment and this will give us some data. And then I would also like to know if there's a way to, I don't know what the application process looks like, to kind of know, like, is this gonna be able to meet your need? Like, what's the gap? I would like to know what the gap is so we can maybe anticipate that for the future.
That's
Any
a
kind of
great-
intel you can get would be helpful.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. We'll add that to our application documents.
Okay, thank you.
I have, sorry. Thank you, Mayor. So I have a question. So I know the challenge is the timeline here. So it's, this has to be spent by September 30th.
That's the next item on the agenda.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you. So from where we were at, before we began discussing, and I brought forward for the elders, the elderly. And then we began hearing comments that we needed to open that, and we've done that, and we've increased this a considerable amount, but there is a finite amount of, but I think the only way we can continue is to look at, I think we're more or less at the end as to how many funds we have really available to be able to work with this, within this proposal that we have, but continue to listen and to look for ways to see how we can increase support to those that really, really need it. While I was at one of my last meetings at Cal Cities on the public safety, we began discussing these newer categories, extremely critical, a couple of new categories that are going and even farther below than the extreme. So it's coming. So I would like us to make sure that we continue discussing to figure out ways and continue to engage the community to figure out how we can work with this. But I think we're just getting to a point, and it's a good reminder, like you said, it's a reminder, and that we're going to continue to be reminded, and that's okay.
Regarding those extremely low, and even like the suggestion of helping those that are coming out of homelessness, we can do that. The only requirement is that they have an existing lease. So if they are, for instance, working with Interfaith and they've received, benefits from them for maybe their down payment and their first month's rent, as long as they have a lease, correct me if I'm wrong, Norma, as long as they have a lease, we can assist them with this rental program.
I do have another comment. As my colleague, Councilman Christian Garcia, he brought up Section 8, so I think it's really important. I like that you clarified as far as the lease being needed, and we're trying to help the people out of homelessness, but again, it requires that they have a lease, which is also very difficult. So thinking of the people that are on the waiting list for Section 8, we're trying to prevent them from facing homelessness. So I really think it's important to really focus on making that group a priority, as well as the seniors. And what that gentleman said, who was raised here in Escondido, really struck me as far as, his struggles, his challenges to get out of homelessness. And I thank God that you are now. But again, we really do have to help our own. So I think this is a great opportunity. So I'm hoping that we could really focus, and I don't know how you would do it, but that's why you're staff and you know how to do these things. Identifying who it is in our community that's on that waiting list, on the Section 8 waiting list, that we could help. Thank you.
All right, since nobody made a motion, I will make a motion. I would like to increase the subsidy to at least 500, and that'll be my motion. Motion and second. Any other discussion?
Both,
Both what?
because isn't it a 300 and a 400?
Yeah, so depending on
The AMI.
the income level, we were going to do the full amount for anyone at 30% AMI or lower, and then $100 less for anyone at 60% AMI or lower.
Okay, to one of the public comments earlier about how much rent is, I'm looking at 60% of AMI. Although that is double the 30%, you're still well below what it takes to survive, in particular in California and San Diego. And like the other public commenter said, there are typically some compounding issues. So I would be fine doing 500 for both, and that will stay the motion.
So I just want to make sure it's clear that that will affect the number of potential.
Oh, I didn't do the math on the 60.
The number of potential, any increase will affect the number of potential recipients.
Yeah,
So
I
you will
understand
lose-
that.
So I just want to make sure that's clear.
You know what, I'm fine with that. I think that the individuals who are going to be accessing this will need it regardless, and I'm fine just keeping it at even standard.
So 500 for both?
Yes,
Okay, I'll second.
it has a second. Deputy Mayor seconded it. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, please vote.
Voting is open. Motion approved, 5-0.
All right, thank you. I'm assuming you're presenting our next one, so I'll just open up the public hearing and turn it over.
Okay, again, good evening. For the record, Danielle Lopez, Housing and Neighborhood Services Manager, and Norma Olkeen, Management Analyst over the Home Program. For this item, we'll be conducting the first of two public hearings regarding a second amendment to the 2025-2029 Consolidated Plan and the 2025-2026 Annual Action Plan. Specifically, we'll be discussing how to spend down home expiring funds. On the agenda tonight, we will be a brief background on the home program and how we got here tonight, the options that staff looked at for spending down the expiring funds, next steps, and then discussion and recommended action. As I did last time, I will have a bulleted slide at the end of the presentation to help guide our discussion before council provides direction. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to hold the first of two public hearings to discuss a substantial amendment to our home program. Staff will present several options that were explored to expend expiring funds, hear public comment, engage in a discussion, and request council direction. On October 15th, the City Council received an in-depth presentation on the status of the home program. At that meeting, staff were directed to explore the expansion of home programming and bring back a proposal for consideration. One of the items you just approved this evening, the substantial amendment, being the substantial amendment to the rental subsidy program. And the second item, which we'll be discussing tonight, is the allocation and expenditure of the expiring home funds. Also at that meeting on the 15th, staff informed City Council of $348,000 in unspent home funds that were scheduled to expire on September 30th, 2026. In January, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, notified staff that the figure initially provided was incorrect. Basically, the data provided was outdated, which resulted in inaccurate reporting. The correct amount of home funds scheduled to expire is actually $583,938.80. This amount has been verified, and we do have that in writing from our HUD rep. With this new information, we needed additional time to flesh out the options and logistics of spending this additional funding, which is why we're bringing this item separate from the increased rental subsidy item. We just wanted to make sure that we took every contingency into consideration so that we could propose an actual achievable proposal. As you know, home funds may only be used for the following 4 activities. I'm pointing this out just to reinforce that we were very limited as far as the options that we could look at to spend these home dollars. Also on the slide, we have the reaffirmed consolidated plan priorities. You can see the proposed amendment is in line with the first priority to support and develop the preservation of affordable rental and home ownership units. As a reminder, home funds must be spent within 9 years of being awarded. Any funds that are not spent in that time frame can be recaptured by HUD. That spending deadline is September 30th of every year. This is just a small section of the report that I had provided back, I believe, at the October meeting. So just to remind you, so for example, any unspent funds from 2019 will expire on 9/30 of 2027, anything from 2020, 9/30, 2028, and so on. We do have an immediate need to spend down the $583,000 shown for 2018, as that will expire this September 2026. But I want to make sure that it's clear that we will be up against this deadline every year to spend down that money. So it would be beneficial to us to spend down more than the 2018 balance at this time. Okay, so on the next few slides, we're going to talk about options for the expenditure of these funds. We've provided printouts for your convenience if you want to take notes on them as we're going through, or just so you can follow along as we go through the options. In the upcoming slides, you're going to hear about the Valley Creek project. The developer of this project is National Corps, and they were selected by the County of San Diego following a competitive solicitation. The project will be located at East Valley Parkway and Fig Street, a 1.8-acre site owned by the county. This project will construct a 100% affordable housing project for seniors, consisting of 136 dwelling units and various on-site amenities. Of the 136 homes, 14 apartments will be set aside specifically for our senior veterans who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. Additionally, they plan to construct tenant improvements and work with Quality Children's Services, a well-established and highly regarded third-party child care operator. National Corps supports families and seniors by providing housing communities that are affordable, safe, and of the highest quality. They enhance neighborhood stability through long-term management and maintenance, as well as providing industry-leading services such as senior wellness, preschool and after-school programs, support for mental, physical, and behavioral health, employment development, family financial training, and social connectedness. A key example of their work is Valley Senior Village here in Escondido. We do have the developer here this evening if you have any specific questions once we've concluded our presentation. Okay, so option 1 is to award National Corps funding in the amount of $3 million for the Valley Creek project. This option utilizes the $583,000 that is set to expire in September, as well as $2.4 million in future home expiring funds, which is approximately the remaining balance from years 2019 to 2023. This option piggybacks on the county's competitive process, saving the city a significant amount of time, allowing for the timely expenditure of the expiring funds. It will serve seniors at 30 to 60% AMI, which is one of the hardest groups to house. It will offer on-site supportive services, including a daycare that will be open to the public, and it will encumber several years of available home funds, ensuring expenditure in a timely manner so that we don't have to return any of those future expiring funds. Another benefit to this project is the local preference that will be provided. First and foremost, any preference must align with fair housing law. But consistent with fair housing law, the developer could give reasonable local preference and consideration to Escondido residents. They could do this through targeted geographical leasing preferences, so basically providing priority to residents that live within a specific radius of the project, utilizing a tiered lottery system, so assigning a certain amount of points to people that live in Escondido, or using a set-aside quota where the developer can allocate a specific percentage of units to residents within a designated area. And then the last one would be targeted marketing, which I think is pretty self-explanatory, but obviously just marketing to the local area here before going out. So back to the other options we looked at. Option 2 is to award National Corps again for the Valley Creek project, but only in the amount of the expiring funds, which is $583,000. This option, there would be no guarantee that the developer would accept the funding due to the funding amount being significantly lower, which would provide less of a benefit to the project. Additionally, there would be less preference for Escondido residents. Option 3 we looked at was to issue a city RFP for affordable housing, which was actually approved last year. This option would utilize the $583,000 in expiring funds, $2.4 million in home future expiring funds, $4 million in successor housing agency funds, and $1.5 in home ARP funds for a total of $8.5 million. With this option, the main obstacle is the timeline. So running a solicitation for an affordable housing project, vetting the proposals, selecting the developer, and getting under contract takes several months. And we just don't have enough time to accomplish that. And with this option, we do feel that the expiring funds would be returned. With that said, a version of this will still be moving forward. The successor housing agency funding and the home ARP funds will still need to be spent on an affordable housing project. So at a minimum, there will still be a $5.5 million available RFP coming in the future for another affordable housing development. Option 4 is a supplemental rental subsidy program that would utilize the $583,000 in expiring funds. This option could potentially serve an additional 292 households in addition to the 80, or whatever that number will be now, served in the existing program. This would be a very temporary program, providing up to 3 to 4 months of subsidy at most. Again, the challenge here is the timeline. After the substantial amendment process, so we have one more public hearing on this in another month, the marketing of the program, processing of 292 applications potentially, executing 292 contracts with residents and landlords, and completing physical inspections, ensuring that all units are up to code, there would just not be enough time to expend the funding, resulting in us, again, returning the funds to HUD. Additionally, there would be significant administrative burden, not only on Housing and Neighborhood Services, but also on finance and on the city attorney's office. And last, we looked at an expanded supplemental rental subsidy program that utilized the expiring $583,000, as well as the future expiring funds of $2.4 million. Essentially, this would serve the original 292 households annually from option 4 for approximately 4 years. However, as with option 4, again, we would not be able to spend the immediate expiring funds by September deadline, and there would be significant administrative burden, all of the things that I mentioned with the previous option 4. So here we have our next steps. Today we are conducting, and I apologize, there's a typo on the slide. We did not correct the date on the community meeting. But today we're conducting the first of 2 required public hearings to introduce the potential amendment, receive feedback from the public, and guidance from the City Council on what they would like us to move forward with. The plans and the amendment, the plan with the amended language will be available at the Housing and Neighborhood Services counter and on the Housing and Neighborhood Services webpage for the 30-day public comment period starting tomorrow, running through April 3rd. We have a community meeting tentatively scheduled for March 25th in the Mitchell Room. And on April 8th, we will conduct the second public hearing where council will be asked to approve the amendment and the submittal of the plans to HUD. For folks that would like to comment on this item, they should email Norma or myself at the emails on the screen. That concludes our presentation. We ask that you hear public comments and then bring it back for staff and council discussion.
Yes, do we have any public comments on this side?
Yes, Mr. Seymour, would you like to speak?
Nonprofit National Community Renaissance. We're here to answer any questions that you may have tonight. We also have our co-developer and co-owner of the property, Mr. Ted Miyahara, here as well. He's president and CEO of San Diego Community Housing Corporation. And we're here for questions or anything you would like us to opine on in this regard of staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
2 more speakers. Victoria Nayak, and then Marijana. Yeah, sir.
So hi again, for the record, Marijana Rodriguez, not with Compact at this moment, just as resident, District 1, hi. But just wanted to share a little bit about my experience because, so I have an experience being having really a lot of housing instability growing up. That's why Compact was my lifeline. They helped me get into Melrose Villas, who is, administered through National Renaissance Corps, and they have a lot of properties here. And it really led to the stabilization of my family. It really allowed my father, who's an entrepreneur and Vietnam veteran, and all the things, right? All the things that we like to support, but had to push through getting a family of like me and my 3 brothers and my mom, and we went through hard times, and that really was the difference maker for us. So I think that as we're talking about all these options, just kind of looking at, we don't have enough 100% low income rental units. We have some set asides, which are usually at 120 AMI. They're harder for residents to be able to qualify for that and to make double that rent. So the opportunity to have a lower AMI, to have more of those units available, then you would see some of those other subsidies that you guys are talking about go further, because so my dad is like at a 30% AMI, and so his rent is like at 1,000, 1,018 or something like that. So then you're looking to see more impact with some of those other programs. So again, just as a private citizen, but really, I would strongly urge you guys to approve that option of bringing them in and giving them, the max of what you guys can afford to give to them, because that's, what did you say, 136 units?
Yes.
136 units, 136 families, right? That's a large impact. So that's my piece on it. Thank you so much. And that's it.
Thank you, Marjana. Victoria?
Hi again. I love that we're having this discussion. I was just wondering, while you all are having your discussion, if you could maybe clarify, it was kind of in my head, it got mixed up, if there's any of these options that are fully guaranteeing that the funds are spent, or which is the most likely one. So that was a point of concern for me, because I hate waste, and I would love to have all of this spent and none of it sent back to the government. All right, thanks.
Option one is the one that pretty much guarantees the money gets spent, correct?
Option one.
Okay.
And then-
I'll close that public hearing. Yeah, I know, I forget.
Oh, no.
Not that time. I'll keep my comments quick. I would love to do a RFP on our own. However, you've been pretty clear about we might lose the funding, and if time isn't on our side, it makes the most sense to go with option one, but that's just my vote. I'll open it up to my colleagues.
Are you motioning for option one, you said?
I did not make a motion.
Okay. I agree with option one. I think it covers all the bases. Also, we are looking at, I was thinking of the silver wave that's coming, how our aging population is just living longer, and they're low income. And then also, I like the fact that, and I remember meeting with the gentleman of this project, I like the fact that they are really focusing on getting homeless seniors off the street and homeless veterans that served our country. We really need to serve them for their sacrifice as well. So I just think that this covers all the bases that we need here long-term, instead of just, although it would serve a purpose in helping people with their rent, I think something long-term is going to have a longer impact. So I'm for option one as well.
I just want to add one more thing, too. I did a little digging into companies that respond to these kind of RFPs, and National Corps, your track record is very good. So, again, I think that would be the best option.
I'll move to approve staff recommendation, or to approve option one.
Do
I'll
you second?
second
Okay, perfect. Great, thank you.
Okay. No?
Just thank you for your work. Yeah, I will echo what my colleagues have said. Thank you.
I'd just like to add two things. I'm sorry. So there will be another RFP. We have those other funding sources, so we'll have the opportunity to do an RFP that is city-run. And this is just the first public hearing of two. You will actually vote to approve at the second. So right now, we were just looking for guidance on which one to move forward with further exploration.
I think that guidance is pretty clear.
Yes.
So, thank you. Then if we don't need the motion and second, no.
No.
Thank you. We'll move on to current business. The first item in our current business is the South Center City Parkway Specific Plan. Just kidding. We're going to recess for 5 minutes. All right, we are going to reconvene this meeting and continue with the current business, item number 15. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Good evening. My name is Sally Schiffman, and I am a principal planner with your long-range planning team. And tonight I'm going to be giving you a presentation on the South Center City Specific Plan and the level of effort that staff believes it would take if we were to choose to move forward with any amendments to the specific plan. So generally tonight on the agenda, we're going to first just briefly go over the purpose of this presentation. I'll give you an overview of what the South Center City Specific Plan is and its intent. And then we'll go into a discussion of our limitations that exist, existing conditions in the area, options before you, projected timeline depending on the option, and then anticipated funding needs. And then we'll finish with any sort of feedback, questions, or direction that council may want to provide staff. So why are we here?
If you recall, back in September of 2025, Council did make a motion for a future agenda item to discuss the limitations of drive-throughs within the South Center City specific plan area. The city manager's office then requested that staff come back and present to you what kind of level of effort it would take to do some sort of an amendment, as well as provide existing conditions assessments for you. So here we are. So first, we're going to start with just a general idea of what is a specific plan. Specific plans are typically a set of maps and rules that guide development in a particular neighborhood of a city. And unlike more general planning documents, specific plans are really customized to fit a specific community's needs or vision. So then we go to what is the South Center City specific plan specifically. This is a plan that was adopted by council back in 2018. It's essentially a linear corridor that runs from just south of the downtown specific plan area down to almost I-15. So primary north-south roads are Center City Parkway to the west and Escondido Boulevard to the east. Main east-west roads include 5th, 9th, 13th, Felicita, and then Brotherton and Citricato. And then other major north-south roads include Redwood and Quince, and then Orange Street. So that's kind of generally the area that we're talking about. The South Center City specific plan serves as a document that guides development and land uses within South Center City. It provides a vision, goals, concepts, and recommendations that are tailored to the South Center City area and preserves and enhances the area's positive characteristics while encouraging constructive changes in concert with our general plan goals and policies. There are 4 primary principles that the South Center City plan entails. It's the promotion of smart growth, the provision of a range of development opportunities, protection of established neighborhoods while supporting revitalization, and creation of public spaces and connections. The South Center City Plan was a result of a multi-year community-based effort known as Envision South Center City. Public outreach was heavily emphasized during the planning process, and between 2015 and 2018, the city conducted multiple outreach efforts to inform and engage residents, property owners, business, and stakeholder groups, which included community events, stakeholder presentations, community conversations, informational open houses, commission meetings, and of course, media and print. The dialogue and input that was received during that phase of outreach helped describe collective preferences, interests, and concerns on the types of land use, density, and character of new development within the South Center City area. And the result is a specific plan based on the community's vision for their neighborhood. In recognizing that this is a large area, the plan is further broken into 8 districts. This is from north to south generally on this map. It's West Mercado District, Escondido Boulevard District, 9th Avenue Overlay District, Quince Street District, 13th Avenue Corners District, Orange Street District, Felicita Commercial District, and Southern Entry District. 2 of these areas, including Quince Street and Orange Street, are residential only, so only residential is allowed for land use, and then the remaining 6 do allow for a mix of commercial and mixed uses. The South Center City Plan advances several strategies to support South Center City's revitalization. Housing opportunities have been expanded through allowances for standalone residential within mixed-use areas, encouragement of accessory dwelling units, and the reintroduction of the compatible missing middle housing type. The plan also supports converting older motels and hotels into housing. Public realm and mobility improvements include development of the Pine Street Pathway, targeted adjustments to roadway widths to improve safety and multimodal access, and the integration of green infrastructure to enhance environmental performance and visual quality. Economic and cultural initiatives focus on enabling small-scale entrepreneurship through makerspaces and home-based businesses while incorporating functional public art to strengthen community identity and improve public spaces. So with that, I'm going to move into our existing limitations and conditions for drive-through uses within the South Center City specific plan area. The specific plan has 3 different categories of allowable drive-through land uses. One is the traditional drive-through restaurant. The next would be kind of drive-through other category. This would include drive-through banks or pharmacies that are either incidental to a primary use or the primary use themselves. And then we have ATM kiosks as accessory and drive-through uses. And then in addition, I did look at automotive-related land uses that are arguably drive-through in nature, so I included both gas stations and car washes. As you can see from this table, these uses are allowed within 5 of the 8 districts with the issuance of a conditional use permit. Conditional use permits this is true of any drive-through throughout the city, and so this is in line with our other zoning policies. And conditional use permits are intended to allow for additional scrutiny over public health and safety and welfare issues, and to ensure that the use is not going to impair the integrity or character of the area that it would be located in. Specifically for the specific plan area, why are drive-through uses limited and regulated? We really are aiming to promote high-quality development and ensure that drive-through developments do not have negative impacts on primarily traffic, safety, air quality, and visual character of the area in which they are located. And when we look at these projects, these items are really what we're focusing on. The transition between the streetscape and pedestrian environment, obviously safe ingress and egress. We want to minimize our driveway cuts. We want to make sure that public pedestrian access is safe. Compatible drive aisles when there's shared uses, so when there's drive-throughs within a shopping center, for example. We want parking areas with clear visibility as people are coming and going through the drive-through or coming out of the drive-through. We want to look for opportunities for enhanced paving and striping to break up what tends to be large paved areas. We want to make sure, of course, that there's adequate stacking or queuing in the actual drive-through space so that we don't have cars spilling out into the public right-of-way. And then we always want to look at appropriate landscaping and screening mechanisms for these uses as well. Existing conditions in the specific plan area. There are already 9 drive-through restaurants within the South Center City specific plan area. Drive-through restaurants in the West Mercado and Felicita districts, so this is the green and kind of orange color on the map. They are already permitted with use permits, and the existing businesses include Tom's, a Burger King, there's a Starbucks, a Better Buzz, and a McDonald's. The Chick-fil-A that has recently gone in, it's almost open at 515 13th. They processed a specific plan amendment about 1.5 years ago in order to allow for that drive-through at the West 13th Corners District. And then the remaining fast food drive-throughs, Carl's Jr., Jack in the Box, and Burroughs and Fry's, those are considered legal non-conforming. They were there before the adoption of the specific plan, and they would be permitted to stay in operation as is, or if a new restaurant wanted to go in and continue operating with a drive-through, they could, as long as that location was not left vacant for more than 6 months, at which time their legal non-conforming status would cease to exist. Any new drive-through that wanted to go into either West Mercado or Felicita would have to go through the use permit process. In addition, there are 11 other drive-through facilities within this area. All of these businesses are permitted in the areas that they are located with a conditional use permit, with the exception of the 7-Eleven gas station at 1702 South Escondido Boulevard. So this is at Felicita in Escondido, which is also considered legal nonconforming. What are our options to move forward? We can leave the South Center City Plan as is, and we would continue to process use permits as they came forward in either West Mercado or Felicita. Everywhere else within the specific plan area would not permit drive-through uses. Or you could direct us to expand allowances for drive-throughs within certain areas of the specific plan, and this would entail initiating an amendment process. If we were to initiate an amendment process, we would have two paths that we could take. We could choose to submit an RFP and try to get consultants on board to help with the process. Or if we would prefer to do this in-house with staff, we're looking at a difference of about 18 months with consultants and about 24 to 30 months without. And it really is a matter of staff time. So the process, we would look at first some feasibility assessments. We think a marketing study would be important to determine whether or not the area could handle the capacity of new or new drive-through uses. And then we would also want to do a multimodal circulation impact assessment to see how the addition of drive-throughs may impact the intended pedestrian use of this area. We would also strongly recommend public outreach. There was a lot of public outreach that occurred with the first plan. It's only been 8 years, so we would want to inform the community of any potential changes and get their feedback. We would then, of course, have to draft those changes, which would be the simplest part of this, and then we would go through the CEQA process and bring everything back for public hearings. Just a little bit, if we are, one of the reasons we're looking at, almost double the time for staff. This is my team's current priority list, so we do have a lot of things going on. If we were to take this on, we would work with city manager and our director to determine where our priorities need to shift. We've also created anticipated funding needs. Again, if we were to go with a consulting firm, these costs would be approximately where they are. If there was opportunities for in-house staff time, then the cost does go away or reduces, but of course then our time is shifted. But we're looking at a cost of approximately $230,000 to do this. There may be opportunities to look for some grant funding, but those are never guaranteed, and at this stage, we don't have any identified grant sources that we would pursue. So next steps, this is the end of my presentation. What I'm looking for from council today is whether or not you would like to authorize an amendment and have us move forward with this. If you would like to do that, if there's any feedback as to specific districts that you would like us to focus on, that would be helpful. And then if there are any other areas of note from council to staff, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments?
None.
No? I see you reaching. Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. I do appreciate it. I was the one that asked for this to be brought to an agenda. And the reason why was I actually had spoken with quite a number of business owners in the area. One thing that we noticed is that there was already a lot of drive-throughs that were there. And the question was that I had was, I don't understand why there are already drive-throughs, but it seems to still have restrictions and CUPs. When I talked to members of the staff, it seemed that it was a lengthy process. I said for an individual to get a drive-through permitted to get the CUP, it was anywhere between 9 to 12 months for each one. To me, especially given that, how many did we see that there was in total drive-throughs there in the area?
There are 9 fast food restaurants and
Okay.
11 additional drive-through
So we're looking at
types.
around 20, and it just seemed that if this was going to be a process for every time that a business owner was going to put it, it seems very time-consuming. It seems like it's it's a big strain on our resources, and that was a huge concern of mine. It just didn't make sense that this was going to be a process that every business owner in the potential future was going to have. The other thing that I was looking at when I was talking to staff and when I was talking to business owners is that this is a main corridor for the city. And I think that we are not tapping into its full potential. If we're looking at something like, well, so if we're looking at Center City, this is where people are driving through to either get home into Escondido, or if they're leaving the city, or coming into the city whenever they are going to or from work. That right there, I think to me is a lost opportunity. We're looking at, like I said, around we're looking at, well, all the way from the 15 to Grand. That is a lot of opportunity for people to be able to go through, grab dinner on their way out or grab dinner on the way in, especially as we know that the drive-through culture is, it's ubiquitous, and we're not tapping into the full potential that we potentially could. Now, obviously, like everybody else, we want to see more sit-downs in the city, but we know on a day-to-day, on a regular weekday, on a Wednesday night, people are trying to get home, and I just think that there's an opportunity here that we really got to take advantage of. So that was the reason for this. I appreciate the work that was put behind this. I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think this is something that's going to be potentially really good for the city, and I'd like to see it go through. Thank you.
Were you making a motion? Will you go back to the last slide that had the questions? You don't need to answer that yet. We can move on to.
Yeah, and does this require a motion, or is this direction?
So that's up to the council what they want to do as next steps. I mean, I would just go back to the slide, if you could, Sally, about already the things in the queue. We could.
If we hired consultants, would that take away from the queue?
It always impacts the queue. I mean, I just want to make sure I'm happy to work with staff to come up with a work plan. The timetable that we've outlined, we'd have to do a solicitation. Obviously, if we go outside, it has less direct impact, even though the team has to manage it. So I'm kind of looking for, is this something that council's comfortable with me looking through, approaching through the budget process and bringing back proposals to look at that? Because there's some other things that aren't in this queue that staff might be advancing, and then you could get in a more complete conversation. So we could bring it back as an option in the budget process, and you could evaluate it in that framework to say, what is it you want to globally accomplish? And where do you want to go direction? My only concern is we haven't advanced those other conversations, and those other conversations may, while this is of interest to the council, you may have greater interests in other locations and other things that we haven't started yet. So,
and I appreciate that. And one thing, just to add to that, because I wanted to say and I forgot to, is that I think we've always focused and I think my colleague has said this in the past, we focus on Grand Avenue, which is great and it's important. And this was important as well as we're branching out into different areas, so that was another concern of mine. I know my colleague has a question, and then after, I guess, we'll see if we could phrase that into like a potential motion, what you just said.
Well, you could provide me simply direction as a group to go back and put this in the budget, process.
I would like to see that.
So that you can evaluate that with other potential items and see where you want to go at that point.
I would like to see that, but obviously we'll hear from my colleagues, and I know my colleague here wants to say something, so.
Thank you. Could we go to the one that shows where it allows for CUP, and that would be helpful. So I had a question for you, council member. So, you mentioned that you had talked to some businesses. Have you, the businesses and I know Chick-fil-A was the latest one that we did in this area. Are your conversations just kind of like FYI, these are things I'm hearing, or have you heard from businesses who said, hey, I want to have a drive-through in the city, but I've decided not to do business in the city because of your really strict, guidelines, and bureaucracy around drive-throughs. I guess I'm trying to understand how much of a priority this really is, or if it was just kind of like an observation.
No, I've heard both. So I heard from people that would like to expand on their businesses, for example.
Okay, like add a drive-through to their
Add a
existing-
drive-through, or I also have spoken with people who have talked about, one, adding a drive-through, or also businesses that told me, specifically one, I'm not going to mention which one, that told me kind of the hassle of going through this to getting a drive-through. And so when I started exploring this, yes, it seems very timely. There seems to be so many that are adding up, or that, every time that one files or requests a CUP, it seems that the process just starts over. And to me, it just seemed like it was superfluous, to be honest. So that was one concern. And then the other question that you had was, you said it was business owners that
who maybe wanted to invest, but they decided not to because of the limitations.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing was, yes, in general, I think there were other businesses that were just seeing that there was opportunity here that we weren't really tapping into. So, that was pretty vague. But again, when I started doing asking more questions, probing a little bit more, it came down to, we do it and we go through a process every time, and it's very time consuming and it's very bureaucratic. So that's why I decided that I would propose this.
Thanks for that context. So one question that I had as well, I thought we had a moratorium on car washes, but I'm seeing that we have a CUP process. So do we not have a moratorium on car washes citywide? Because the reason I remember this so distinctly, I know we have a moratorium on storage units because of the huge one by the freeway that no one expected to be there, and it's kind of flagged it. But when the ups and downs roller rink got demolished, which I'm still heartbroken about that, by the way, and got turned into a car wash, that I remember, I was not on the council yet, but I remember when there was a moratorium discussion, because and it was impacting that one, because when the moratorium, I remember there being a moratorium, I thought, and it was possibly going to impact that car wash that's there now, but then they decided to like grandfather in that car wash. But it was during that time that they were transitioning from the rink to the car wash that I remember that discussion at council. So I thought we had a moratorium on car washes.
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Martinez. Veronica Morones, Assistant Director of Development Services. Jumping in here since Sally has been here about 7 months now.
And I'm glad you're here, Sally. We've been waiting for you for a long time, right?
Sally is also an Escondido local.
Yay.
And grew up here, so very excited to have her. As far as I am aware, and I will defer to if our city attorney has anything to add, I am not aware of any urgency ordinances that place a moratorium on car washes, but we can absolutely look into this and get you a very responsive answer.
Right. I don't think there is either, but my recollection was there is a financial impact requirement for, at least that's for storage units.
Yes. So there was an amendment to the Escondido zoning code that predates me, but it did modify Article 57, miscellaneous uses of the zoning code, to require, to City Attorney McGinnis's point, a fiscal impact analysis for uses that were deemed to have a low economic development impact to the city, of which storage units are included. We will confirm whether car washes are and follow up.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, I would like to know, because that's I was under the assumption, and that's why I was like surprised to see it there. So I appreciate your comments, Councilmember. This is your district, I'm right. So, or some of it falls in your district, I believe. So I can understand, where you're coming from this. I would just say that my only concern is, well, I would hope first that maybe one of these processes would be able to facilitate that. My concern is, I also don't want like a ton of drive-throughs in Escondido, because I do think we also have to think about the health of our city and like idling cars, even though I'm not saying that I don't use drive-throughs, but there is an impact to environment with idling cars. And so while I know they're very convenient, I think it doesn't necessarily fulfill the like health goals of our city. So just, I have, that gives me some pause on kind of opening the door to a lot of them versus maybe kind of considering them on a individual basis, right? I'm totally open to that. Especially if there's a business that's already here and they want to like, change that. I think that that's a fair thing to consider and how we can maybe streamline it for them. But then also I want to be mindful that if we can go to the slide where you talk about the community engagement, one thing that I hear a lot from community is when they do provide input, like that they want to make sure it's meaningful input, right? And it looks like we made these changes because of a really robust and long 3-year community engagement process that included a bunch of stakeholders, which included residents, property owners, and businesses. So to override that, I would want us to have kind of start the process again of like engaging the community before the policymakers do it, right? So I'm just sensitive to the fact that there was a process that engaged the community and stakeholders to arrive to that and then to kind of undo that. That's the only thing that gives me pause, but I appreciate you bringing this up and I learned from it. And, things change, needs change. So if that's something, and we have a lot of new residents on that side of town, so if that's something that they want now, maybe we can kind of expand the community engagement and see like, do we want to still remain, have this remain? So just some thoughts of like maybe community engagement, maybe seeing if it's really that much of a priority right now. I'm open to it, but what gives me pause is I don't necessarily want to become a city with, a ton of more drive-throughs because we have a lot of them because it does have health impacts and pollution impacts. As well as I want to respect the community engagement process of the people who participated in the development of this specific plan. So just some of my thoughts on this. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. From an economic development standpoint, I'm very pro-business. And so looking at an opportunity, especially in this thoroughfare, and as Councilmember Christian Garcia pointed out, it's a very highly traveled through area. People generally, if you think about restaurants, some of the restaurants that have been sit down there in that highly traveled area do not do very well, but the drive-throughs do. And that is my district in the southernmost part, and I'm seeing the housing, just the development going up, and what they're missing there are those fast food drive-throughs or even the coffee shops to go there, which I think, it would be a missed opportunity on an economic development standpoint in that we could have more businesses, increase the tax revenue for our city while also serving the growing community. And growth is inevitable. We have to be able to provide housing, but we have to, again, in these areas, we want to look at it more like not just we're throwing in a bunch of houses here, but what are we providing this community that they can live in that community, live, work, play, shop. So I think those drive-throughs, I think, is something that would serve not just the business itself, but the communities there, and it's a benefit to our city. So I fully support this. Also, I really do believe from a dollar standpoint, it was $230,000, but I do believe it's important that we do use consultants in this because we don't want to create even or increase the backlog that the staff is already facing, because that could cost us even more dollars down the road. So I think for something like this, to me, it's a priority because I'd like to keep pace with the growth that's there. And so I would like to consider having the consultants, making it a priority, and I think it is meaningful. I'm looking at it as building new services for the new communities that are already built and that will continue to be built there. And we have that in other parts of the cities, but not in my district. Just kidding, we do. But I'd like it here as well. So thank you for your presentation, but I really do want to stress that I think hiring an outside consultant is going to be important because of the timing on this. Thank you.
Yeah, it certainly seems to me that we would need, if we move forward with this, an outside consultant to help with all the priorities that you have. Just informally, I've heard from at least a couple of businesses here in Escondido that they're moving to a model of drive-through. They don't have any now, but they are moving in that direction, and they're actually looking for places. And they've made it clear it's very hard in Escondido to find something like that. And these are businesses that have been here for a very, very long time. So I think this is going to come to us at some point, that we're going to have to deal with it realistically, because businesses are starting to mention and to talk about that. So I think that kind of getting ahead a little bit would probably be good for us. So those would be my comments regarding this.
All I'm going to say is that I support what the city manager said as far as process and bringing back options at a future day. But go ahead.
And I'm sorry, I usually don't speak after one time, but what we've seen in recent past is we look at feasibility studies, and almost all the feasibility studies that we've seen along this area have been, the feasibility studies have shown that it's almost necessary to have drive-throughs for them to be successful. So if we're going to be basing our future policies off of past studies, I think it aligns well. So that's all I'll say.
Do you have the direction you need?
I do.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Any other comments or questions? If not, we'll move on. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Item 16, California Center for the Arts, Escondido Foundation Financial Report and Update. The time is yours.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor White, Deputy Mayor Garcia, and council members. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. I'm excited to give you an overview on our financial status, as well as update on our programs. Zach is passing out our annual impact report for your review, and I will be, for tonight's purposes, we have developed a presentation that aligns with the city's strategic goals, reflecting our sincere commitment and enthusiasm to be a trusted and collaborative partner in supporting and serving the Escondido community. And I'm happy to answer any questions either during or after the presentation at your pleasure. So the first strategic goal is financial stability and growth. So this year marks a key milestone in our progress towards long-term financial stability and community resilience as we close the fiscal year with a positive net income for the second consecutive year. The first time, it could be a luck or a fluke or something, but 2 years in a row, it seems like a trend, and that was our goal. So if you look at this graphic on your page, we finished 2 years ago, $720,000 in the black, and then last year, $135,000, we evened out. And the projected net income this year is $509,000. Now that seems very high, and it is. It's an anomaly. And that has to do with the gift from the Rotary Club of Escondido. So $500,000 of that was for the purchase of the Rotary stage. So the very thin margin is what we're looking at for this year's budget, and that's a $9,000 net balance. So it is smaller this year, as we had the sunset of the $200,000 that we received for the last 20 years from SDG&E for support, and that was graciously facilitated by the City of Escondido. If you look at other parts of the graphic, it breaks down the city management fee and how we use it. You can see that the majority of the fee that the city pays us to manage the facilities goes back into the facility maintenance and engineering of the center, closely followed behind security, education, and free community events with IT and phone service and system being the last part of that. I also wanted to note that our contributions over the last few years have really increased. The community has taken ownership of the facility, and last year, in 2025, we received over 1,560 individual gifts of all sizes. And we value all of our supporters, and we encourage that every gift of any size make a difference. So we appreciate the community's support. Next, we're going to talk about public safety and service enhancements. This is really exciting because in the past 2 years, we have switched to a 24-hour security presence and installed 37 security cameras throughout the campus, with 3 more planned. As a result, we have seen a reported drop of 70.21% of incidents on campus from 23 to present. So in 2023, we had 47 reported incidents, and just last year we had 14. That is a direct result of the security that we have put to use and also the cameras. So it is also noted that we have made a commitment to safety for our guests. If you ever go into our theaters upstairs, there was previously no handrails, and it seemed quite dangerous. So we got a small grant this year to get it started, and we are funding it as we go and as we can. And we've just installed handrails in our center theater upstairs, and we plan to do it as we can in the concert hall as well. Okay, infrastructure and community development. So, to be a better partner to the city of Escondido, we knew we had to invest in the team, the programs, and the campus itself. And that's where the Prebis Foundation really came into play. The Prebis Foundation over the last 2 years has awarded the center over $670,000, and that was invested into the infrastructure for our community advancement team, $200,000 for our technical internship program, and a $20,000 match for our community events. This County of San Diego also invested in some LED lightings for our theater. Not a lot to do the entire theater or small theater, but it really has made a significant difference, not only for the lighting of the theaters, it does cover more space, but also the cost savings to the city of Escondido, as well as allowing our technical interns to train on state-of-the-art instruments. Previously, we had all incandescent instruments in our theaters. We also created new classrooms. We condensed our staffing offices. We brought everybody upstairs, and we're all sharing a little bit more, and made more space for classes to happen on campus, as well as a resident artist space. And of course, we have our workforce development program, which is probably my favorite thing that we do. We train interns in the art of stage technicians. We give them paths to have professional careers in the arts, and our graduates run theaters all over California. We are truly part of the arts and entertainment ecosystem, starting right here in Escondido. So for community development, we know that we are part of the city and a product of a vote of the citizens. So we found that it was important to find out the community's wants and needs. We did this through arts assessment and also town hall events. These are open forums that we receive tough questions and have an open dialogue to allow for anonymous suggestions. Through that, we developed these community programs, the North County Arts Awards, where we are shining a light on others to receive the recognition they deserve for their hard work and commitment to artistic excellence. The Artful Start Back to School program, which is a new program, which we filled 200 backpacks full of art supplies for students each year, and also supplied over 200 haircuts in our studios through the generosity of some local barbers. The Hidden City Film Festival is a brand new program this year where we brought in a new genre we hadn't really been working with, and that is film production. That created great partnerships through CSUSM and also John Paul the Great. And also last year was our very first Nowruz Festival, and that is the Persian New Year. It was a beautiful celebration with over 850 people in our museum. Whoops, I didn't get there. I'm sorry. Addressing homelessness. Our contribution is through active public spaces. Simply put, parks and public spaces studies confirm that when they are activated, programmed, and managed, they attract diverse users and strengthen community presence, which can discourage long-term encampment. Our goal is to keep these facilities activated as much as we can to promote safety. We also have a role in problem solving and would love to work with the city on this active commitment. Since I got here, I've been working with Voices of Our City Choir 3 years ago. The mayor accompanied me to one of their rehearsals, and we saw something truly remarkable there. And my team, my board of directors, and I are committed to creating programs like Voices of Our City with a proven track record of using the power of the arts to move folks from homelessness to permanent housing. It's happening now. It's a very exciting program. Also, I recently met with Mr. Gallart and to receive permission to prepare a grant for our Rose Garden space, which has been neglected for several years. But we think with activation, with arts and murals, and the proper indigenous vegetation, we can create an activation in that space that would really create more safety. Economic development and housing. The power of the arts, fueling Escondido's economy and identity. These numbers are tangible and they're quantitative. Last year, we sold 118,000 tickets through our box office, and we had another 40,000 attendees in our free community events. That leads to an economic impact of over $6 million. Additionally, we subsidize $1.2 million in programming costs for our nonprofit partners and those who would like to use, and we want them to use, our spaces. Sustainability and resilience. So one way we can achieve sustainability and help reduce the cost for the city is through LED lighting. We've already started the process by seeking our own funding to put in lightings to help with that. And not only is it better on the economy, it's more environmentally sound as well. We've also sought new partners and created great collaborations. Sixth String Society has really created a co-production partnership with us that has really changed what we do and what we are allowed to present, because it has turned a very a presented season with a lot of deficit, with a lot of risk, to one that is really financially sound. We also began working with Ventana to create dinner and show packages, which is going very well for both of us. So these partnerships are really key. And lastly, for the first time in a decade, we have a presented season sponsor, and that is through San Pasqual Tribe. Their first show that they're sponsoring is Kenny Wayne Shepherd in our concert hall on June 23rd. We are both really excited about this partnership, and we look to continue that in years to come. And lastly, for sustainability, we received a once-in-a-century gift. In October of 2024, the Rotary Club of Escondido marked an extraordinary milestone, its 100th year. For that, they wanted to do something visionary and deeply rooted in the community. So they gifted the California Center for the Arts Escondido Foundation $500,000 to purchase and utilize a mobile stage. This stage is not just a stage, it's a platform for possibilities. Jack Raymond said this transformational gift will benefit the entire region. It solidifies CCAEF's status as the premier arts organization in the state of California. It made its debut a few weeks ago at the Love Esco event in February. Many of you were there and saw it. But we will be having a formal ribbon cutting later this spring once the rest of the gear arrives. Arts and culture. This is where we live. So we have so many new events these last few years. We've listened to the people of our community and really created events that speaks to them and what they want. One of the things that I would like to talk about, because not many people know about this, is our public art partnerships. We were instrumental in hanging public art in the mall, at the mural at the library, and also the Creek mural. We have helped artists, and we're still doing that today. We have 2 more in the works right now. And we have helped with Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month. Last year, we had 5 events at our center during the month of April. This year, we have 7, and they go all month long. And it's very exciting to be a part and have true partnerships with the other arts organizations in this community. And for time purposes, we've talked about a lot of these other things, but many of you got to see our Chicana exhibit that happened in the mall, in the museum. We had over 6,000 people visit that exhibit. Now that is usually what comes to a museum in a typical year. So it was a tremendous success, and we are looking to replicate that success next year when we have, later this year, when we have our Blood Memory, our Indigenous exhibit. In 2 weeks, Unrolling Paradise opens, and that is also coincides with the Nowruz Festival. And it is a Persian rug sculpture installation, and it's really spectacular. It's really exciting. I hope you all are able to make it. And lastly, the San Diego Tijuana Jazz Festival will enter its 3rd year. That's a really exciting event. We're working with groups in San Diego and Tijuana, cross-culture. So we are not only drawing a straight line to downtown San Diego, we're also drawing a line into Tijuana and sharing audiences and fellowshipping and sharing everything together through the arts. And it's really a beautiful event. That happens the first week in October. This is where we live. We are honored to be stewards of this beautiful facility. And we do all this not for our own ambitions, but to let others shine. So I want to touch just a little bit on our own strategic plan. In 2024, we created our strategic plan with stakeholders, staff, and our board of directors. Number 1 strategic goal right now is the pricing for the theaters. It's really expensive currently to rent our theaters. We are looking for an investment. I've written 2 grants so far, hoping that we are able to get some initial funding to allow us to lower the rates, where users in turn will have more volume to be able to keep those rates lower as we move forward. We want to rebuild our education programs. Right now we're starting slow and responsibly. Our classes are selling out. We're listening to our community, and part of that is our workforce development. We're starting a workforce development program within our museum for a curatorial and preparedness program because of the success of our current stage tech internship programs. We want to establish a student advisory committee with arts to build the arts leaders of tomorrow and serve the youth through programs designed by youth for youth. And we want to increase accessibilities through continued free programs, partnerships, and programs such as vet ticks and our student rush tickets, making art more and more accessible. We never want the price of a ticket to stand in the way of being a part of arts. And we also look to build back our capacity. Our successes are owned by our dedicated team and board of trustees. So we are all doing more with less. Our staff is down about 20 people than it was 2 years ago, but yet we're doing more. So we look to create solvency in order to build back a little bit more of that capacity to be able to do more things. And finally, my favorite word is adaptability, being flexible enough to accommodate the changing needs of this community we serve. We've got to be able to pivot and do what's needed so that everybody has access to the arts. And finally, it's 8:30, but until 9 o'clock tonight, in the spirit of everything we just spoke about, I invite you to the concert hall to sit among about 800 of your fellow citizens to honor the United States Army Field Band playing a free show tonight until 9 o'clock. Any questions? That's it.
I didn't realize that was the last slide. I was waiting for the next one. No, thank you for the update. I'm glad things are going well for you, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues.
Thank you. I appreciate all the work you guys do. I'm glad that things are heading in the right direction, and I know personally I always really enjoy all the events that we have at the Center for the Arts. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. And I have to say that you're accurate in that I'm seeing more, when you said space activation, there really are results that I'm seeing. I am seeing more engagement, more people being drawn, and that's what we want to see. Just something always happening at the center. And I think Love Esco Day was just another, I think it was a perfect example of just how engaged people are in coming to the center. And that the Centennial stage was just absolutely incredible. I do have a question regarding, you have the workforce program, and you mentioned working with Cal State San Marcos and also John Paul the Great.
Mm-hmm.
Do you work with Palomar Junior College at all?
We do. Palomar and also Miracosta College are feeder programs into our technical internship program.
Okay.
And Palomar, actually, we had a exhibit of their students last year, and we're working with them to develop the curatorial workforce development program within our museum.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Both my colleague and I, we attended a Palomar College event this morning. They were talking about their arts and entertainment program, so I'm glad to hear that you're doing that. Yes, I think it looks good. The future looks good. I'm glad to see that you have a lot of people that are investing, donations and grants. And I think another thing, too, the 24-hour security presence, I think that is absolutely making a huge difference, because where people feel safe, they're going to come out and spend time. And whether it's daylight saving time or whatever, when it's dark out, there are things still happening at the center. And with the security, it's just going to make people want to come out. And again, everybody wants to feel safe while they're enjoying their time here in Escondido. But thank you for the presentation, and congratulations.
Yeah, I'll go with it.
Thank you so much, Gina. I want to say that I had seen this before, but just such a beautiful annual report. The photos are just amazing and beautiful presentation. I feel like the center is kind of my second home. Sometimes I'm there 3 days in a row, so it's a very special place. I like the Art Lives Here slogan, and I think I have seen a lot of changes, and it's a positive direction that you're moving into. So I just want to thank you, your staff, your board, and just all the people that make all the events there possible. And I think the more that you partner, I think the more growing partnerships you have, the better it will be. We have a lot of businesses across the street, so I know that you have this arrangement with Ventana, but it would be great to remind people, that you have Chins and Shakey's and all these other restaurants and downtown businesses, maybe some other opportunities there. So I'm excited about what you're doing. I love the center, and the stage is, I think, a game changer because it also will help bring revenue for you all. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see what else is in store in the future, and thank you for all your efforts and for staying so late to present to us. I know it's been a long night.
All right, it has been a long night. Thank you. I was surprised you were doing it standing up. Probably stretching a little bit. So I wrote down a few notes. Congratulations on the great public safety increase. I had no idea you were doing 24 hours, but I have noticed that when I walk around and it's late in the evening, there were some things that I chatted with you about, finding people asleep on the campus and things like that, and I haven't seen that. And so I believe that's probably a direct correlation to the security that you've brought in. So great thinking and great taking care of it. I think it's great that you're being creative and you're seeking ways to save funds. That's always going to be something important, not only just to save, but it provides a way for you to be able to have some additional funds. Maybe it's not a lot, maybe it's only a few $1,000s here or there, but for some other program, it might be just a big amount. So thank you for that. And museum presence, that was a big deal for me because so many years in Escondido, I didn't even know that there was a museum there. And now that I've had the opportunity to go to different exhibits, Chicana being one of them, and then an interactive one that's been there. Is it still there?
It's still there.
It's still, yeah, that's what I thought. Just very, very, very good. The Hidden City Film Festival, that was so much fun. That just was so much fun. And in my perception, and maybe I'm wrong, but in my perception, it was staff-led. They were like on fire, like we'd really want to do this. They reached out to me early, and yeah, let's see what we can do together. And it was great to see it come to fruition. So I made a couple of those. I haven't made it to the North County Awards yet. I've been wanting to, but always something going on, right? But I look forward to being able to do that. And I agree with my colleagues. We see a lot of great change going on, and that's great. And I still haven't been able to see the stage. I've seen pictures. It looks wonderful. I already have a couple of things in mind that people have talked to me about. And not only now local, but I actually have some binational interest in doing some work here. So a lot of things. Thank you for the presentation. I'll be quiet now so we can all go home.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last item, number 17, is the fiscal year financial status report and budget adjustment request.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. My name is Christina Holmes, Director of Finance, and this item is the fiscal year 2026 second quarter financial report. So in today's presentation, I will review the general fund financial report for the quarter ending December 31st, 2025, provide an update on the Measure I local district tax revenue for the quarter ending December 31st, and then we'll go through some budget adjustment recommendations. So starting with the general fund, these two tables show a comparison of actual general fund revenue and operating expenses to the budget amounts for the fiscal year. In addition to comparing the financial activity between years, we also look at the results for both revenue and expenses through December 31st compared to the projected amounts to ensure the financial activity is still tracking with the adopted budget. The projected results are based on the past history of the timing of revenues collected and historical expenditure activity. So at the end of the second quarter, general fund operating revenues are trending slightly ahead with the average at 35% of the total budget, and expenses are slightly higher than the average at 50% of the total budget. So we'll go into the results behind those numbers, starting with the general fund operating revenue. Overall operating revenue for the general fund increased by $3.9 million from the prior year. Each major category of revenue has increased except for other taxes, which has decreased slightly by $176,000. In the next several slides, we'll go into the details of each category. The city's base sales tax revenue is the largest category of revenue and makes up 35% of overall revenue for the general fund. These numbers here do not include the revenue that's generated by the Measure I local district tax. Those numbers will be shown separately later in the presentation. So actual sales tax receipts are over the December 2024 amount by about $269,000. This was largely due to sales at local auto dealerships and distributions from the state and county pools, which combined make up our two largest sales tax categories. Property tax revenue increased by $536,000, or about 6.3% compared to this time in the prior year. Factors influencing property tax revenue are the annual inflation adjustment under Proposition 13 and those property value reassessments that occur with changes in home ownership. The city collects franchise fee revenues from San Diego Gas and Electric, known as SDG&E, cable companies conducting business within city limits, and Escondido Disposal Incorporated. Overall revenues received from franchise agreements decreased by a little over $89,000 from the prior year. Franchise fees from Cox, DirecTV, and fees from SDG&E combined declined by about $57,000. This was offset by an increase of $146,200 from EDI. Business license revenue, which is also in the other taxes revenue category, increased by $154,000. And just as a reminder, the city did transition to a third-party HDL to process that business license revenue. That was effective June of 2025. Transient occupancy tax, also known as hotel tax, decreased by $18,340 compared to the prior year. This category of revenue also includes activity from the short-term rental program that was effective in July of 2025. And staff are planning to bring an update to City Council on that program August 5th. Charges for services include paramedic fees, community services fees for recreational and community activities, and charges for development-related services, which include engineering and planning fees. This category of revenue has increased by over $1.8 million. This is primarily due to paramedic services revenue. In fiscal year 2023, the city did begin receiving additional revenue from the Ground Emergency Medical Transportation Program, and that's really the driver behind those increase in fees. Intergovernmental revenue includes the Rincon Fire Services Agreement, state-mandated cost claims, various grants, and revenue received from the fire mutual aid reimbursements. Overall revenue has increased by $346,000 compared to the prior year. Revenue generated from permits and licenses increased by $348,000 compared to fiscal year 2025. In July of 24, the City Council approved a user fee schedule, which was effective in September of 2025, that set all direct benefit user fees to 100% full cost recovery. Construction and development activity also continues driving building permit revenue compared to previous fiscal years. The city receives lease and rental income from city-owned properties, shared revenue with the City of San Diego for activity at the Vineyard Golf Course, and small cell tower lease revenue. Overall revenue has increased by $94,150 compared to the prior fiscal year. Fines and forfeitures is a fairly small category of revenue for the general fund, making up 1%. This represents fees collected for vehicle code fines, parking ticket fines, other court fines, code enforcement citations, and impound fees. Overall revenue has decreased by a little over $71,000 compared to last year. And lastly, investment and other revenue includes interest earned from investing activities and other miscellaneous receipts and is increased by about $4,590 compared to the prior year. Next, moving to general fund operating expenses. This next table shows general fund operating expenses by department category. Overall expenses are at 49.6% of the operating budget at December 31st. This next slide shows the same general fund operating expenses, but grouped by the expense category. The top section shows total employee service costs. Through December 2025, regular employee service costs are about 45% of the budget amount. That is due to salary savings from vacant positions. Overtime expenses, which are often due to those vacancies, are at about 71.5%, and that's trending consistent with historical years. So that concludes the general fund. This next slides will be regarding the Measure I Local District Tax Fund. So the Measure I Local District Tax implemented a 1-cent sales tax increase and was effective April 1st of 2025. For the first 6 months of this fiscal year, the city has received $11.9 million in local tax revenue. The revenue and tax rules are slightly different for a local tax measure, so the major categories of sales tax are slightly different, with general consumer goods being the top sales tax category, followed by autos and transportation. So next will be a series of budget adjustment requests that we are requesting City Council approval of this evening. Starting with the Communications and Digital Media Services Department, they're recommending to utilize $100,000 of restricted revenue from public education and governmental fees known as PEG fees. This revenue is part of the franchise fees received from the state's cable operators and can only be used to support the city's costs for public access and programming. The budget adjustment recommendation is to use this restricted revenue to cover the cost of the existing County Office of Education contract and the ongoing accessibility upgrades to the city's website to keep compliant with the federal web content accessibility guidelines standards. State Senate Bill 707, which was adopted at the end of 2025, requires the city to provide a remote option that allows members of the public to participate in city council meetings. The city selected a platform called Public Input that integrates with Zoom and Microsoft Teams to facilitate remote public participation in a manner that fully complies with all requirements established under SB 707. This budget adjustment is also funded with PEG fees. There are 2 items for economic development. The fiscal year 2026 operating budget includes $50,000 for business outreach and marketing. To date, those funds have been used to contract with Bloom Public Relations to develop a strategic plan. An additional $32,000 is recommended to extend these services. The operating budget also provided funding to engage with a consultant to evaluate the feasibility of a property-based improvement district downtown. A contract with New City America was approved, and additional funds are requested to extend this contract. The Development Services Department is requesting the addition of 1 new principal planner position. This position is recommended due to reclassifications within the department and will be necessary for current planning operations and management, as well as complex project review. City Council approval is required to add the position, but the cost of the position, when filled, will be covered by current fiscal year salary savings, and then the position will be added in the upcoming fiscal year 2027 budget. As I mentioned earlier, in fiscal year 2023, the city joined the Ground Emergency Transportation Program. This program provides additional funding for each ambulance transport that our fire department conducts. In order to participate in the program, administrative fee is required. To date, the calendar year for 2025 GMT revenue collected is a little bit over $4.8 million. The administrative fees were a little under budget than what we anticipated this fiscal year, so an additional $545,000 is needed to bring the administrative fees to a little over $2 million. As part of the library infrastructure project, additional funds are needed to complete updates to the exterior path to the library to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. These improvements are required by building code and are not eligible expenses under the grant term. To improve security and implement crime prevention through environmental design improvements, staff are recommending to install fencing between 3rd Avenue and Spruce Street along the stormwater concrete channel. This project bid has been completed, closing on February 24th. At the January 14th and January 28th City Council meetings earlier this year, staff presented recommended traffic safety projects across the city. This slide is a list of those recommended projects with the required funding. The Comprehensive Active Transportation Strategy identified $1.9 million of life safety projects near schools. Next is a traffic calming project to slow traffic as it approaches the downtown area at Juniper and Grand Avenue for $90,000. Funding of $275,000 is recommended for corridor signal coordination on primary arterials throughout the city, a traffic consultant to reestablish previous arterial signal coordination, and prepare signal coordination plan to be ready to implement when the traffic signal equipment installation is complete. So these next few slides are those same budget adjustment requests, but organized by the funding sources recommended. So these first two, funded with PEC fees. Next are two items for the general fund. That's the economic development contracts and the additional contract increase for the fire department. And then this last slide is a list of the Measure I recommended funding items. So that concludes staff's presentation. Again, the recommended action is to receive and file the financial status report and approve the budget adjustment recommendations.
Thank you. Are there any public comments?
None.
Okay. Colleagues, questions, comments, motion? Motion and second. Any questions, comments? No? All right. Motion and second, please vote.
Voting is open. Motion approved, 5-0.
Thank you for the presentation. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to a future agenda? No? Okay, then we'll start at this end this time. Councilwoman Martinez with your subcommittee report and other report.
Thank you. We didn't give our reports last time, so I'm including the last couple weeks. So I went to a League of Cities event last month. It was our normal chapter meeting. We had a presentation by District Attorney Summer Steffen. She gave an update on Prop 36 efforts, also just the advocacy needed at the state level to provide funding for implementation of Prop 36, although they have been able to start funding some of those programs already to demonstrate that they're effective and they work, and build a case for asking for the state for money on continued implementation of Prop 36. She also shared about the Shelter Ready app. That's a housing app that's been very successful. This morning, it's what's the name of this month, this week for it has to do with like Dr. Seuss and reading out loud. Read to America or something. Read Across America, thank you. Read Across America is this week, so I was able to read to 2 classes, and we were able to read 2 books to second and third graders. They actually asked me to read the second book because we had like 10 minutes. So I was like, how awesome that they want me to read a second book. On Sunday, I had the Rotary Club of Escondido's Court de Cuisine event. In case you don't know, so we have like 5 Rotary Clubs in Escondido, and most of them do some kind of fundraising event to provide different projects around the community. We have a very generous, engaged community of Rotarians in Escondido. We're really lucky to have that. So this is their signature annual event where they showcase local food vendors and beverage vendors, small businesses that all donate food and beverages to the cause. And so that was a really fun event. And we also honor Rotarians who are doing great work in the community. This morning, I joined my colleague, Councilmember Fitzgerald, early in the morning. So it's been a long day. For the annual Palomar College Showcase, and they did highlight their media studies program as well as a scholarship award and the Comet Award for a family that lost their son, who was a former student of Palomar and now have a scholarship in his name, and they also highlighted the Fire Academy. And then today is 1 month till Earth Day Escondido, everybody who's excited. So it'll be at Washington Park, Saturday, April 4th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We're still accepting exhibitors. We're accepting volunteers. It's going to be a family fun event, 1 month away, Earth Day Escondido. So I hope to see you there. That's all I have.
Sir?
Continue to work on the Clean Energy Alliance. We are moving forward with different opportunities for people who are struggling with their electric bills. So there's an opt-down option. I can provide more information for that later. But in short, everyone's defaulted at 75%. If you default to 50, if you opt down to 50%, you will save more money. You'll pay less on average than if you were to stick with SDG&E. So it's a good option. We're also looking to continuing to look at different options such as geothermal and nuclear for energy throughout the region. And I'll give you more updates on that as it comes. And other than that, thank you to my community for the privilege of serving.
All right, I too did guest reading today and yesterday for TK, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. Had both a LAFCO and a SANDAG meeting. There's really no notable action that was taken there. On Saturday, I got to do a proclamation and name the day Dorothy Graham Day in the city of Escondido. Miss Dorothy turned 100 years old on Saturday. It was kind of cool. And then the Chamber of Commerce hosted its first Coffee with the Mayor, which will be a monthly thing for the community and business owners to come in and have coffee with me. And that concludes my report.
All right, a couple of things. I also participated in the Read Across America. Yesterday I had the 4th, 5th graders, and this morning I had TK at Juniper Elementary. That was fun. It was a lot of fun to be able to read to them. I had a North County Dispatch JPA meeting. The big discussion is regarding the contracts, so we're in the middle of negotiations for that. I continue meeting with the National League of Cities Public Safety Committee, Advocacy Committee, as we're moving to put together our plan for the year. And Friday, a week ago this Friday, we had the Digital Art National winners, their art. We did a ribbon cutting here at the mall. This is something that was born from the sister cities. We had a couple of congresswomen come from Mexico City for that. It was great. It was well attended. The art is incredible. Now I'm just waiting for the mall to open that and then be available for the public. And finally, I just would like to let everyone know, Feria del Mariachi is this Sunday at the Center for the Arts. The VIP is at 12 o'clock. The regular concert starts at 3. I've been working a lot. This is the premier event for Route 78 Rotary Club, and I've been doing a lot of their promotion for them. And it's been a long day for me. I was up by 4 o'clock this morning so I could be at Despierta San Diego Univision to do one more segment for them. So I am ready to get some rest. So that concludes my remarks.
Well, it sounds like we're all ready to get some rest. I'll go really quick. So this morning, yes, I attended the Palomar College Showcase, really good, highlighting the Fire Academy, vocational trade training, the arts, and the media on Monday. I attended the Chamber of Commerce ribbon cutting at Thai Cuisine at 2250 South Escondido Boulevard. It is so good, so fresh. I love seeing new businesses, and that's in my district, super exciting. Even if it's not in my district, it's always super exciting to see new businesses open. Sunday, I attended the annual Coeur de Cuisine that honored Dr. Rick and Susan Greenstein for 40 years of service, community service to Escondido. Saturday, I presented a proclamation to the Escondido Pop Warner Savage Wolves cheer team coach Audrey Sanchez, who took the team to win nationals just after 2 years of being their coach. So that put Escondido on the map again. Also, March is Women's History Month. So thank you, amazing women. Celebrate women. And that's it for me. Thank you.
City Manager?
Nothing to report.
If there are no further public comments, this meeting is adjourned.